2023 was the year I started my YouTube channel, and I deep dived into some of the best of JRPGs. Some brand new, others timeless classics that still pack a punch today. From retro masterpieces that defined a generation to modern gems pushing the genre forward. I reviewed a little of everything, so whether you're here for nostalgia or looking for your next epic adventure, this is the ultimate JRPG recap you won't want to miss. With all that being said, I want you to keep in mind that these reviews were all done within the first 6 months of my channel. I was still getting used to the whole creation process, so while the quality isn't up to my most recent videos, they're kind of like looking into a time capsule to see my humble beginnings. We'll even close this video off today with my very first video, which, if I do say so, was an absolute train wreck. But with that being said, let's jump right into today's video, where we look at each one of my reviews that I did during 2023. Hi there, welcome to my review for Ys Memoire's Oath in Felghana. Ys Memoire's Oath in Felghana is a remaster of the 2005 remake of Ys 3 Wanderers from Ys. It was released in 1989 for the PC 8801. This was my first Ys title and moreover my first Falcom game, so naturally playing a current remaster of this game on the Switch was a no-brainer. Anyways, enough of the history and my history with the game, let's get into the review. Ys Memoire's Oath in Felghana begins with you on a boat landing at a dock, which honestly Adol doesn't have much experience with. This man's middle name might as well be Shipwreck. Anyways, you dock in the land of Felghana, your pal Dogi's home country. Shortly after landing, you run into a girl named Elena. She's being attacked by wolves, so naturally Adol, being the hero, is obligated to save the damsel in distress. Now, this here Elena could be Adol's love interest, but we all know Adol's true love is an adventure. Adol's an independent adventurer, he don't need no lady love. The story follows your typical demon summoning anime arc. Maguire and his right-hand man Chester are trying to collect 4 statues to summon a demon down the world as we know it, and Adol, I just casually run into gods on my daily walks. Kristen has to save Redmont, as he just has to say yes to anyone in need. The gameplay in Ys Memoire's Oath in Felghana is very simplistic and basic. You have a button for a sword slash, you can combo up to 5 hits. This will be your main form of damage. There's also a rising slash performed by pressing attack while ascending from a jump, good for taking out those pesky birds. Also a downward stab that hits multiple times performed by pressing attack while descending. Works well against enemies that don't move much, like poison spewing plants. This is why I don't touch grass. You have a button for magic spells, a fireball, a spinning sword cyclone, and a charge tackle. Obtained via normal story progression, once you get your first corresponding gem for that element, the spell can be charged for more damage or effect. Ruby for your fireball, emerald for your wind cyclone, and lastly topaz for your earth tackle. Each spell has 3 upgrades total. Magic spells use a self-replenishing MP meter, which makes them more cooldown oriented as opposed to resources. Spells can be used not only for combat, but also to solve puzzles. You can use the fireball to light torches that open doors, just like Zelda, or you can use a wind cyclone to cover distances that a normal jump cannot reach, or you can use a tackle to crush walls. Sorry Dogi, I got this, you are no longer needed. The game has 3 basic types of equipment: swords, armor, or shields. There are 6 pieces of each type of armor, or sword, or shield. All equipment can be obtained either in treasure boxes or through plot progression. Each piece can also be upgraded up to 3 times by collecting Ravel ore. Early in the game, these are only found in treasure boxes, but however, as you progress, enemies will start to drop it, letting you max out all your equipment. The game also has accessories that are used in certain situations. An amulet protects against lava damage, a crystal that lights up dark areas, as well as a cloak that will heal you if you stand still, much like Ys 1 and 2. Speaking of which, does anyone else get bothered when people call the series Ys or YS? Just a pet peeve of mine. Anyway, the game has dungeons that play out like 3D platformers with enemies within. Generally, the main goal is to navigate these dungeons, fight the boss, usually resulting in a new ability that allows you to access a new area. The game has 2 distinct types of bosses: agile human enemies, then more often than not play like a low-tier bullet hell, and giant godlike bosses that follow distinct patterns. Both require a different approach, and it keeps the game fresh. Both types of bosses are fun and can be quite difficult until you get the patterns down. New to the Switch version of Oath in Felghana is speed up. By clicking on the right stick, you can increase the speed from 1 times to 1.5 and then again to 2 times speed. Personally, I used it when I need to grind a few levels. It's quite handy and it saved quite a bit of time. The Switch version runs at a higher resolution than the PSP and maybe PC version, and at a crisp 60 frames per second. I didn't notice any frame drops myself, but I'll be the first to admit that I'm not super familiar with spotting those types of frame drops. I want to say resolution is 720p in dock mode, but again, I'm not too sure. I couldn't find anything online with an exact frame rate or resolution. And again, new to the Switch version is new art for the portraits of the characters. There are over 30 portraits in the game, one for each NPC and main cast. Each one has been redrawn for this title. If you prefer the PSP and PC originals, you can also swap back to those if you'd like. The sprites and backdrops have been redrawn as well, and the art style holds up very well. This game is very visually appealing, nice and bright with very detailed sprites and backgrounds. Just like the newest patch for the PC Steam version, this version is fully voiced, albeit only in Japanese. It is an import title after all. This is the first time Adol has an actual voice, and it's really well done. Not only villains in the main cast have voices, but every NPC also has a voice. It breathes life into the world and makes the world much more accessible. The game normally uses the same soundtrack from the 2005 PC version. However, if you like, you can swap to either the PC Engine version or the Sharp X68K version from 1990. If you want that old school feel, all soundtracks are unique in their own way. I especially like the PC Engine soundtrack. There's just something about those old soundtracks that bob. Overall, the music has that soft rock aesthetic to it. Some of my favorite tunes in the game are The Boy Who Had Wings, Believe in My Heart, and Valentine Castle, which you can currently hear in the background. Those are just some of my favorites. The soundtrack is honestly 11 out of 10. There isn't a single bad tune, which is not uncommon when it comes to Falcom JDK. They're musical geniuses. The soundtrack honestly had me just sitting there and listening to the music instead of playing on numerous occasions. As for the length of the game, it definitely does not overstay its welcome, but it's not too short either. A typical playthrough will last you anywhere between 10 to 12 hours, depending on how much you get lost or struggle with bosses. There are times when it will require you to return to old dungeons with new bracelet abilities to find treasure or progress. Sometimes it's not exactly clear about this. Bob's Amulet comes to mind. It is required to get the crystal to light up dark caves. However, the game doesn't really allude to this at all, so there's a chance you'll be running around wondering what you'll miss. Luckily, this doesn't happen very often. That is why you need to talk to NPCs. The game is a comfortable length and has 6 different difficulties. Very easy, normal, hard, nightmare, and inferno. The game is designed for replays with this New Game Plus mode, allowing you to start from the beginning with all your upgrades and levels. Inferno specifically is designed for New Game Plus. As this game has a very special place in my heart as it started my relationship with the developer Nihon Falcom, makes it difficult to say much about it in a negative light. Ys Memoire's Oath and Felghana is a great game. I love my experience with it this time around. If you are a fan of action RPGs in the vein of Zelda or Alundra, this is a great game to pick up and play. Have you played Ys Oath and Felghana in any versions before? Leave a comment telling me about your experience with the game, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. That's the meat and potatoes. I'll see you in the next video.
Thunder of the gods! What the heck is that?
Namco Bandai, what were you thinking with the Game Boy Advance port of Tales of Phantasia? Anyways, welcome to my Tales of Phantasia review. Tales of Phantasia was an action RPG for Super Famicom released in 1995, PlayStation in 1998, Game Boy Advance in 2003, PSP in 2006, and then it got a second port on PSP in 2010, and then finally an iOS port in 2013. Back in 2013, there's a joke going around within the Tales community saying that everything seemed to need a Phantasia port. Personally, I think we need another port of Tales of Phantasia. It hasn't gotten a port in about 10 years, and I would love to be able to play it on modern hardware. Anyways, let's get on with the review. Tales of Phantasia takes place in the world of Asalia, under the moons of Silverant and Tetheala. Sound familiar? It should, because Tales of Phantasia is a distant sequel to the ever-popular Tales of Symphonia. The story of Phantasia takes place 4,000 years after the events of Symphonia. Asalia is a world with mana where machines are quite frowned upon. Anyways, so the game opens up with Kless, the main hero, waking up in his hometown of Totus and is instructed to go boar hunting with his buddy Chester. While he's out hunting, he hears warning bells and rushes back to town, only to find the town set aflame and destroyed. Kless finds out from his dying mother that the town was invaded in order to get Kless's pendant that he has worn since he was a child. That's the main hook of the game, and it really gets it going. Tales of Phantasia is full of cliches. You throw in a bit of family betrayal, summoning of ancient demon kings, time travel, among other tried and true cliches, and you have Tales of Phantasia. Keep in mind, when this game initially released in 1995, these were not cliches, but in 2023, these storylines have been done time and time again and are old at this point. That's not to say that Tales of Phantasia isn't an enjoyable game. It does, however, feel like it's been told before. Tales of Phantasia doesn't stand out very much when it comes to exploration and world maps. It's very 90s RPG with exploring towns, and this doesn't change as the game got ported over and over again. It's the usual talking to NPCs and robbing the townspeople blind by stealing anything not nailed down. Why else would you want to be a JRPG hero? Dungeons play out generally the same, and Tales of Phantasia uses a random encounter system. The random encounters are incredibly frequent in Tales of Phantasia, right down to being frustrating at times. This can get even worse when you're either lost in a dungeon, which happens often, or you are trying to solve a puzzle and you get interrupted by a random encounter. You can reduce random encounters by using an item called a holy bottle, though I didn't notice much of a difference, if one at all. As the game has gotten ported, they have toned down the random encounters, but they are still very frequent. As a staple of the series, the skit system from later Tales games is present, in any port from the PlayStation port and later, except for the Game Boy Advance version, but we don't talk about that. Most of your character development and interactions come from these skits. They can vary from silly interactions to telling where you need to go next to continue the plot, or the typical male characters asking each other what they like in a woman. They're usually entertaining, to say the least. When Tales of Phantasia was released in 1995, it had a quite unique battle system. It was a side-scrolling action RPG, almost like a fighting game. In fact, later on in the game, you can get an accessory called a combo command, pull off text using fighting game commands such as quarter circle forward attack or half circle back skill. I never used it myself because I couldn't remember all the inputs, but it's a neat addition. In the early versions of the game, on the Super Nintendo for example, you had 2 long-range texts and 2 short-range texts performed by holding either A or B at long or short range. As the game got ported, however, it uses a directional plus skill button system as shown in later Tales of titles, along with an up to 3-hit combo performed by pressing attack repeatedly along with other directions. In later ports, combos become even more accessible by letting you attack 3 times and cancelling into a level 1 tech and then into a level 2 tech. Much more fun than just spamming the same move over and over again. Speaking of spamming moves over and over again, one thing that did bother me in Tales of Phantasia in regards to the battle system is that some techs just aren't created equal to others. For example, there's no reason for you to use Rising Phoenix as it doesn't do much damage and it doesn't really combo into anything else. Whereas you can use a Tiger Blade comboed into Demonic Tiger Blade for 90% of the game, and these moves are gotten within the first few hours, making learning new moves kind of pointless. The art style has varied quite a bit from port to port. The Super Famicom version has almost a Saturday morning cartoon art style, and while I'm talking about the art style, why does Kless have to have a bowl cut? I will never get over how ridiculous it looks. Anyways, the PS1 version goes more with a chibi look. This is personally my favorite art style. And then the PSP versions go with a more anatomically correct look akin to Tales of Eternia. They all look pretty good, except for Kless's bowl cut in the Super Famicom version. Shame on you, Namco. The game otherwise is very aesthetically pleasing. The game is bright, it's colorful, and nothing seems randomly out of place. It all flows together wonderfully. As for the music, 1995 was when Motoi Sakuraba shined. The regular battle theme, Take Up the Cross, is still my favorite battle theme in the entire series. Decisive, the music that plays during the various Deus battles, and Fighting of the Spirit are also some of my favorite battle themes in the series. The town and dungeon themes are very appropriate as well. I really loved old Sakuraba music. Tales of Phantasia is a pretty average length for a 90s RPG, running from about 20 to 30 hours, possibly up to 40 hours if you want to do the side content in the bonus dungeon. The game is paced pretty well, no side quests taking you too far away from the story, though they do involve a lot of backtracking, which can be frustrating when you have to take a boat everywhere. It's quite unfortunate that you get your airship for lack of a better term, so late in the game and after an event that cuts off the earlier side quest, especially when you're fighting those overly frequent random encounters. Overall, Tales of Phantasia is an enjoyable but familiar game if you are an RPG vet. Definitely worth a playthrough if you can handle super frequent random encounters and god-awful bowl cuts. I will never forgive Namco Bandai for this crime against humanity. Thank you for tuning in to my Tales of Phantasia review, and if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so that you know when my new videos go live. Have you played Tales of Phantasia before? If so, tell me what you thought about it. That's the meat and potatoes, folks, and I hope you have a wonderful day. What is your favorite Tales game, and why is it Tales of Destiny? Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my review for Tales of Destiny. Tales of Destiny originally was released on the PlayStation 1 in 1997. It is the second game in the Tales of franchise. However, today we will be reviewing the remake of Tales of Destiny released in 2008 on the PlayStation 2. I will also mention I played through the game using the Life Bottle Productions English translation, and this was the first time I experienced the Tales of Destiny remake in English. I'll leave a link to their Twitter in the description below. Anyways, let's get this started. Tales of Destiny begins with country boy Stan Elron, a boy seeking adventure, waking up as a stowaway on the Lumina Draconis. When found, he gets put to work as a deckhand when suddenly the ship gets attacked by a hostile group of monsters. Stan, in a panic, runs around the ship trying to escape from certain death, when he finds a junk sword chained up in a warehouse. However, the sword starts talking to Stan, and explains that he's a swordian from the Aether Wars that happened 1,000 years ago, and here starts our adventure. I just want to talk about Stan before we get into the meat and potatoes of this review. This kid is dumb, like really dumb. This guy makes a sack of rocks seem like Einstein. He doesn't have basic knowledge of most things due to being a country bumpkin. I guess he has an excuse, but my gosh. Can't believe he thought Chelsea could speak to trees for a good half of the game. Gameplay! I present to you the best battle system Tales has ever conceived. If you've played Tales of Xillia or Tales of Graces, you'll be familiar with the CC or chain combo system. Tales of Destiny on the PS2 is where the CC system originated. Long gone are the skill levels and limited TP. Instead, you have techs that use a designated amount of CC. As long as you have CC, you can combo moves together. This is either regular attacks, special arts, and magic spells. CC doesn't require healing items such as orange or pineapple gels, just stand still and CC rapidly recovers. The battle system starts out slow, but as you get more CC, combos really open up, making for an absolutely explosive battle system. To this date, no battle system has matched it. That being said, there are some things about it that bother me. If you aren't hitting weaknesses, some enemies just don't stagger. Weaknesses not only increase damage, but they also multiply critical hit rate and accuracy by 4 times. Criticals are much more important in Tales of Destiny than any other Tales game or RPG as they restore your CC. More CC means more combos means more fun. Outside of battle, it's more of your typical run around cities, robbing people blind, and talking to NPCs. Some give you quests. The quests really flesh out the world, and by flesh out the world, I mean you get to run around your backwater town and herd sheep. Whee! There are mini games just like every Tales game. There's an arena, there's a foot race around town, and there's even a shooter type game where you have to shoot things with the cutest little archer around Chelsea. New to the PS2 remake is a whole second story, from the point of view of Leon Magnus. It gives more insight into Leon's view of the whole story and how he was feeling during the adventure. Tales of Destiny also uses a mini crafting style system called Re-Rise to upgrade equipment and create accessories. During battles, you will gain items called lens. There are 5 different types of lens. These lens can either be sold for money, or you can use them to upgrade your equipment. Each upgrade requires an average party level, and a designated number of each type of lens. The equipment that you can create via Re-Rise is usually better than the purchasable equipment, so it's very helpful, and the equipment usually has other benefits as well, such as absorb HP or increasing your minimum or maximum CC. The graphics age surprisingly well for a game that's 15 years old. The 2D sprites are absolutely gorgeous, and the spell effects look super nice, maintaining a consistent 60 frames per second all around. I don't remember experiencing any frame drops at all, which is very impressive with how much is going on at all times in combat. So while the art style in combat and in towns and dungeons is amazing, it maintains those gorgeous 2D sprites. However, when you're running out on the world map, it's very PlayStation 2. Blocky, low-res 3D sprites, it looks awful. Luckily, you don't spend too much time on the world map, but it's a bit jarring going from the one style to another. What can I say? More bangers from a Toy Sakuraba. I don't know what else to say about it. Motoi Sakuraba hits it out of the park again with his early Tales work. The standard battle theme, Bare Its Fangs, is glorious, and Leon's battle theme, Fate of a Fencer, is just amazing. Outside of battle themes, the music was really calming for the most part. I love old Tales music. It reminds me of my childhood. Tales of Destiny, like a lot of early PlayStation 1 games, is not a very long game. A playthrough will take you about 25 to 40 hours, depending on side quests. My playthrough for this review was about 35 hours. Leon's side is a little bit shorter, as you're about 15 to 20 hours, for reasons I won't go into due to spoilers. The game is also very well paced. I felt like you're hitting action-packed bit after bit, no real slowdown time outside of when you go from the first main arc to the second. Other than that, it's high octane from beginning to end. Tales of Destiny, while not my favorite in the series, is definitely up there as one of the most enjoyable. The story is one of the best though. Make sure you bring paper towels, it has some tear-jerking moments. I'd give the game a solid 8 out of 10. Congratulations on making it to the end of my Tales of Destiny review. Have you played Tales of Destiny before? Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. If you enjoyed this review and want more, check out my Tales of Phantasia review and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. That's the meat and potatoes, folks, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Don't despair, Mike. Under the Southern Cross, anything is possible. Oh, Star Tropics. When I decided I wanted to start doing YouTube, this is one game I knew I had to cover. Star Tropics is an action-adventure game released in 1990 for the NES. It's about a high school ace pitcher named Mike Jones who is on a quest across tropical islands to find his lost uncle. This game has always been important to me as it was one of the first action games I beat growing up. Ever since then, I've played it every summer as kind of a tradition to myself. Anyways, enough about me. Time to get into the meat and potatoes of this review. Star Tropics has an interesting history. It was developed in Japan, but never got a release there. It was only released in North America and Europe. As a game developed for an American audience, it uses some various stereotypical aspects. First of all, the two passcodes in the game are 1492 and 1776. Little American history lesson for you. 1492 was when Christopher Columbus landed on the Bahama Islands and started the colonization of America, and 1776 was the year of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That might not be entirely accurate, but hey, I'm Canadian. Give me a break. Feel free to flame me in the comments below. Another interesting fact for you. In the original release, the main weapon you got was called a yo-yo. However, due to Canada copyright laws with the term yo-yo, it got changed to Island Star. Yay, Canada copyright laws! So this was originally going to be way longer, but I figured nobody wants to hear me go into excruciating detail about the story of Star Tropics. So here's the microwave version of the meat and potatoes of Star Tropics. Our story begins with our not at all stereotypical American hero, G.I. Joe! An ace pitcher from the city of Seattle, off on a summer vacation to visit his archaeologist, Uncle Jones. No relation to Indiana. However, it appears he went missing after talking to every single NPC in the game, including a pig in his butthole. This happens in every town, by the way. You travel through a dungeon, fight some slugs and snakes, and eventually a snake boss. Then you meet your uncle's assistant, who advises you that your uncle has been abducted. He then lends you the Subsea, which is your main vehicle of travel, and introduces you to Not Rob, also known as Navcom. And here ends Chapter 1. For the most part, this is how the gameplay loop works. Introduces you to the area, go through a dungeon or several dungeons, fight a boss, and move on to the next chapter. Each chapter has a theme. Chapter 1 serves as the intro, starting off your summer vacation and introduces you to the game mechanics. Chapter 2 introduces you to a dolphin and asks you to save her son. Chapter 3 is the longest chapter in the game. It starts with waking up a sleeping beauty. I use that term lightly. Then you have to find a crystal ball in the ghost village so the wizard can turn you into a woman so you can enter the all-girls castle, eventually making it to the top of the Hermit's Mountain so you can wake up the village chief's daughter. Chapter 4 is a very musical chapter that involves playing a giant piano and ends with sinking the giant ship blocking the strait. Interesting that it has an 8-bit rendition of My Country 'Tis of Thee. Chapter 5, this is the infamous chapter, is relatively short, involves getting swallowed by a giant whale, finding your way through the labyrinthine intestines, and starting a fire to get sneezed out. Honestly, I'm surprised Disney didn't sue over this. Anyways, this is the infamous letter scene. At this point in the game, it requires you to enter a certain frequency. This frequency is not found in the game at all. The original release had a letter from your uncle. In order to find the frequency, you had to dip this physical letter in water, and the frequency would appear. An awful mechanic was not repeated in any other game for obvious reasons. The Wii and Wii U version on the Virtual Console replicated this with a virtual letter, but the Switch version has nothing, so Google is your only option. The frequency is 747 for those who haven't figured it out in the past 25 years. Anyways, back to the chapters. Chapter 6 is where you finally track down your uncle, and he tells you he was abducted by aliens because he has found 3 magic cubes. The aliens have since stolen those magic cubes, and it's up to you to find these magic cubes again and get them back. This is where the star in Star Tropics happens. Chapter 7 is where the game not only goes sci-fi, but the difficulty ramps up substantially. The chapter is somewhat long, and the game becomes unfair at times. You collect 2 cubes in this chapter, one which powers up your yo-yo of doom, and another that maxes out your hearts. Chapter 8 is more of just a finale chapter. It's short, and you found out the true villain is the leader of the aliens named Zoda. Basically a boss fight and a hallway to the final boss. World gets saved, they throw you a party, you shove bananas in your ears. What a fun vacation. Gameplay in Star Tropics essentially has 2 different gameplay styles. You have the overworld, which resembles Dragon Quest or Final Fantasy. This is generally how you go from town to town or dungeon to dungeon, usually insists on talking to every single NPC to progress to the next point. This happens in every town. Then you have your dungeons. Dungeons are where the meat and potatoes of Star Tropics takes place. Dungeons are very similar to Zelda. Movement in dungeons takes place on a huge grid. This means no diagonal movement, and you can only move 1 tile at a time. No half tiles or anything. This means that once you move in a direction, you're committed until you make the whole step. This gives a certain degree of strategy to the game. Furthermore, there's a delay when moving. When you press a directional key, you point in that direction, and a moment later, you actually move. Sounds confusing and frustrating, but it actually is designed that way intentionally. This way you can aim your attacks before you actually move all the way to the next tile. Once you get used to it, it works really well. To defeat your enemies, you have your basic yo-yo that gets powered up, or you can use your sub-weapons. Sub-weapons have a designated number of uses and disappear once you leave that dungeon. Some examples of sub-weapons you can find are a fire-spewing torch, ninja stars, a baseball bat, or some bolas. But the coolest one has to be the spike cleats you get that make you invincible and warps you to each enemy doing damage. There are also some special items called magic items that have special uses, such as revealing ghosts, freezing the water, or restoring health. These can only be used by pausing the game. Personally, I feel the pixel art of Star Tropics has aged incredibly well. It's bright, it's colorful, and best of all, the game doesn't really recolor monsters for the most part. There are a few recolored monsters here, but most of them are different throughout the whole game. Which is nice, as recolored monsters was a trend that started in the NES era and continues until even today. The music of Star Tropics is kind of a mixed bag. I love the music, and it's great for about the first hour, but due to the same 3 to 5 songs being used throughout the whole game, it gets old relatively quickly. The dungeon theme is an absolute bop though. It's a high energy battle theme, and dungeon music is always worth it in my opinion. Star Tropics is a relatively short game by today's standards. The game can last you anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, depending on how lost you get. My playthrough for this review took about 3 hours, however, this is from someone who has played the game many times, and knows where all the secret walls are and how to solve every puzzle in the game. The pacing can be kind of off in Star Tropics. For example, chapters 1, 2, and 5 are incredibly short, only taking 10 to 15 minutes apiece. However, other chapters such as 3 and 7 are incredibly long and can take upwards of 45 minutes to complete. I personally feel chapter 3 should have been separated into 2 chapters, as it felt really long. My final thoughts with Star Tropics is, despite a few difficulty spikes and pacing issues, it is overall a very fun time. It feels like you're just playing through a summer vacation when that summer vacation gets abducted by aliens. If you enjoy Zelda or kooky stories full of bananas being shoved in your ears, I would definitely suggest playing it. Overall, despite the issues, I would give it either a 7 or 8 out of 10. I want to thank you for enjoying my Star Tropics review. This review was quite a bit longer than my other reviews, but I wanted to spend time talking about it as it's one of my favorite games of all time. Did you enjoy the review? Have you played Star Tropics before? Tell me about your experiences or your thoughts on the review in the comments below. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. I hope you have a wonderful day. Everyone has always had that dream, right? The one where you want to be a princess and chase after your Prince Charming? No? Just me? Ah well. Hey everyone, welcome back to Shanky Plays, and today we are reviewing Rhapsody Marl Kingdom Chronicles, a collection of Rhapsody 2 Ballad of the Little Princess, released in November 1999, and Rhapsody 3 Memories of Marl Kingdom, released in December 2000, both of which were previously Japan only. Also, this goes without saying, but there will be a few spoilers, nothing too serious, but be warned. So pull up a chair, grab a snack, grab a drink, and get ready while I get into the meat and potatoes of today's review. Now, I am not one to say a game is designed for men or women. However, the Rhapsody games definitely aim towards the girl demographic. The basic story of the games is you play the role of a princess on a mission to find your Prince Charming, which typically leads to you going on all sorts of adventures and getting into some crazy shenanigans. The story of the games are not particularly deep, in fact, they're quite simple and silly. They feel like interactive versions of stories you would tell children before tucking them into bed. By no means are they bad, but they are quite silly and sweet. However, you might seem a little bored if you're looking for a hero to save the world type of story. I was quite impressed with the fact that they actually English dubbed the voice scenes. Honestly, it was the last thing I expected, as it's becoming more and more common for niche games to be localized with only Japanese dubs. It was really nice for this collection to feature dual audio. Anyways, the one thing that really makes the Rhapsody games stand out from every RPG is they are actual musicals. At times during the story, the characters, villains included, will break out into song. It's incredibly cringy and ridiculous, but it's kind of heartwarming too. It's almost as if Disney directed a JRPG. Now, the songs are still in Japanese, however, they do feature English subtitles. Definitely the better choice. I can't imagine how the songs would turn out if they tried to dub them. The gameplay of Rhapsody is something I've never really seen before. The Rhapsody series uses a Pokemon-esque system where you can recruit enemies and have them join you as puppets. Most characters have the ability to equip up to 3 puppets to augment their stats or give you new abilities. In Rhapsody 2, puppets are equipped to characters. However, in Rhapsody 3, instead of only equipping puppets to characters, you can set a puppet as sort of a main puppet and then equip sub-puppets. Is the word puppet starting to sound a little bit weird to anybody else? Anyway, Out of Battle is a pretty basic run through overworld areas to make your way to towns and dungeons, progress through dungeons, and make it to the next story event. Doesn't really do anything that hasn't been seen before, but you're really in it for the cute story and comical character interactions. The Rhapsody remasters, they can't be explained as anything other than cute. They're super colorful and incredibly pleasant to look at, though you can definitely tell they are both games from over 20 years ago. They look absolutely gorgeous. However, there is one thing that really bothers me. This Rhapsody collection has an option for smoothing. As the pixel art has not been redone, you can use a smooth filter if you don't like the choppiness of pixels, but I would not wish this on my worst enemy. It looks awful, absolutely atrocious. If Depression had a visual, this would be it. It's like someone smudged everything together, it makes the dialogue unbearable to read, and it just turns the game from a gorgeous looking retro game to something someone vomited on the graphics and tried to scrub it clean. Here, I'll live the pain so you don't have to. Gross. I'll never recover from this. However, there is some good news. There's also a CRT filter as well. I'm not a huge fan of CRT filters. It's made to look like it would have looked like on the original TVs, you know, the old tube TVs, CRT monitors. It darkens the screen, but at least it doesn't offend the eyes like the smooth filter does. The music for Rhapsody is one of the main draws to the game. With the game being a musical, the music is possibly some of the coziest I've ever heard in a video game. You have great music at perfect times. As one of the main themes of the game is romance, you have that feel-good music. Then you have the music in a forest that gives you a feeling of adventure, then a haunted mansion that makes you shiver. Each different composition really accentuates the current moment of the story, which really feeds into the experience. However, while the music is great, the real thing that needs to be talked about is the actual musical part of Rhapsody. As stated before, there are moments in the game where all of a sudden the characters, be it your player characters, the NPCs, or villains, will just randomly start singing. They can be about the typical I wanna find my prince kind of song, or a song about cats making ice cream that turns out to be poop. Yeah, that's actually an entire chapter's plot point. It can be super cringy, but no matter how cringy it is, still makes you laugh and feel good after it's all over. If you are looking for a nice, short game, Rhapsody games are definitely perfect for that. Each game is about 10 to 15 hours long. They definitely do not overstay their welcome, though I was left wanting more of the story. The length of the games coupled with the story of the game makes it feel like a perfect first RPG. The chapters are short and sweet, being roughly an hour long. The games are linear, so getting lost isn't an issue. It's a very comfortable length, and the difficulty isn't really there, so you won't spend a ton of time grinding for levels because of difficult bosses. Rhapsody is a cozy game series and a great couple of games if you're looking for a feel-good comedic game to last you for a weekend. Just don't expect too much and you'll have an enjoyable time. Are you going to pick up Rhapsody Marl Kingdom Chronicles? Let me know in the comments below if you're looking forward to it or your thoughts on the game. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. That's the meat and potatoes. Thanks for tuning in, folks, and I hope you have a wonderful day. It's here. It's finally here. Time lapse. The year is 2020. You're browsing Kickstarter, and what do you see? An adorable retro-style game that gives you insane Super Nintendo vibes. You decide to back this title because it reminds you of days of gaming past. Fast forward to August of 2023, and the game you've finally been waiting for all these years gets a release. You sit down with your controller and get ready to experience your childhood thanks to Sabotage Games with Sea of Stars. Good evening, my friends. Welcome back to Shinky Plays, and today I want to give you my first impressions of Sea of Stars. Released on August 29th, 2023 for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox, and PC via Steam. Furthermore, this game at launch is on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus Extra. You have no excuse not to play it. Anyway, all the footage you're about to see is from the first hour or two of the game, so spoilers will be minimal. So grab a snack, strap yourself in, and get ready to hear the meat and potatoes of Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars follows the tale of Valere and Zale. Valere, born on the winter solstice with the power of the moon, and Zale, born on the summer solstice with the power of the sun. Very curious children with latent magical abilities who have the tendency to get into trouble. One day, they decide to explore the Adventurer's Cavern with their plain old friend Garl. Within the cavern, they get jumped by several monsters, and the team of friends are almost killed, but they get saved by the local headmaster, escaping with their lives, only resulting in Garl's eye being injured. It is this set of events that causes the headmaster to see potential in Valere and Zale, and he takes them off to a school in the sky to train for years until they are worthy to go off on their own adventure. The story of Sea of Stars feels very reminiscent of games like Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana. It seems quite similar, but unique. I can't wait to see the direction this story goes. Oh, the gameplay mechanics, I love them. The combat feels like a mix between Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG and a strictly turn-based combat. It has the aspect from Super Mario RPG of in-battle QTE events. Pressing A right before a physical attack will increase its damage, pressing A right before taking damage will reduce it. Furthermore, each skill has a unique QTE to increase its damage. It's quite intuitive, and it stops the game from being a mindless button masher and requires you to pay attention. Furthermore, you have combo attacks from the likes of Chrono Trigger or I Am Setsuna. As you attack, you build up a combo gauge. Keep filling up that combo gauge and you earn points. You can then expend those points to do attacks with multiple party members, such as having multiple normal attacks at once or a full party heal. These combo points expire at the end of combat, so there's no point in holding on to them. Another interesting aspect of the gameplay is the leveling. You know how in lots of RPGs, you kind of want to avoid leveling earlier so that later party members don't end up vastly underleveled? Not a problem in Sea of Stars, as you have a party level. When you gain levels, your whole party gains a level, so your whole party will be similarly leveled up. You do give each character a specific stat bonus per level up, but outside of that, there are no individual character levels. Outside of battle, it has a very similar world map looking like Chrono Trigger, where you see your party from a bird's eye view and walk from town to town. Dungeons are quite a bit puzzle-based. So far, they're quite simple, but it's nice to see puzzles again. Puzzles in RPGs have been very minimal and non-existent as of late, so it's nice that we get to experience them again. Have you ever seen pixel art so absolutely gorgeous? Sea of Stars has some of the best pixel art I've ever experienced. It's an incredibly colorful game with some of the most amazing area designs I've ever seen in a retro-style game. The caves look cold and fearful, the sunny fields look warm and inviting, and the towns at night look peaceful. Honestly, it has to be one of the nicest looking pixel games to exist. Want to make it look even better? Play it on an OLED screen. It's just so amazing! In addition, the animation is on another level. It's a 60 FPS game, and everything looks so smooth. From the jumping to ledge, battle animations, and just running from screen to screen. This has to be one of the most aesthetically pleasing games in recent years. How did an indie title get the legendary Yasunori Mitsuda? I'm not sure, but it absolutely pays off. You may know of him from Chrono Trigger, Xenogears, and Mega Man Legends fame. An absolute legend lending his genius to Sea of Stars pays off. Now, he is only a guest composer and lent his musical talents for 10 songs in the game, but it's so great regardless. Fits the whole retro feel without sounding like chiptune music. The music is incredibly varied and fits each area so well. I'm not terribly far into the game at this point, but I haven't been disappointed by any music at all. Looking forward to continuing on to hear more of these amazing pieces of music. Alright, not everything can be sunshine and rainbows. Now, while the game has been amazing so far, I do have two concerns. One of which is easily remedied. The first thing that bothers me is the dialogue bloops. When there is a cutscene and your characters are talking, there's this light tapping sound as the words come up on your screen. It's meant to simulate the dialogue from old visual novels, however, it personally annoys me. Thankfully, this can be fixed in the options menu. You can either turn up the sound or turn it down, or just shut it off completely. It's a nice aspect for that retro feel, but I'm not a huge fan. The other concern that I've noticed is that there are semi-common grammatical and spelling errors in the game. From words just being incorrect, such as remember instead of remember, or just sentences not flowing properly. It's not incredibly common, but it does happen here and there. Hoping that a patch is out soon to fix these. I would imagine it's only due to Sea of Stars being done by a French studio and the dev team might not be perfectly fluent in the English language. Not the biggest problem, but it is definitely noticeable. Other than that, I'm in love with Sea of Stars. So far, Sea of Stars is such a relaxing and mind-blowing experience. The game has such a strong retro feel, but feels incredibly modern at the same time. A gorgeous experience that controls incredibly well. I can't wait to get further into the game. After I complete the game, I will put out a full-blown review, so if you don't want to miss out on that, ding that notification bell and subscribe to the channel. Like the video while you're at it. Are you picking up Sea of Stars, or have you already? If so, what are your thoughts on it so far? Let me know in the comments below. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Are you looking for an adventure through old Japan? Or at least a place that is incredibly similar to one? Monochrome Mobius may scratch that itch. Hey, welcome back to Shinky Plays, and today we are reviewing Monochrome Mobius. Initially localized for Steam on November 17th of 2022, finally got a release on PS4 and PS5 on September 5th, 2023. Huge thanks to NIS America for providing me with a copy of this game for review purposes. And as always, I'll try my best to avoid spoilers, but some may slip through the cracks, so keep that in mind. Anyways, strap yourselves in, grab a snack, and get ready to hear all about the meat and potatoes of Monochrome Mobius. Story is where Monochrome Mobius really shines. The story is cliché, but it is pulled off in a way that makes it seem really unique. Monochrome Mobius is a sequel to Utawari Rimono, Mask of Deception. I am probably messing up that pronunciation. Anyways, your adventure starts with you taking control of a young Mononofu named Ashtor who lives with his mother and younger sister. While out on an investigation as instructed by the local lord, you run into a strange girl named Shunya. who claims that her and Oshtor's father, who he initially thought was deceased, is still alive. Oshtor finds that to be strange as he's never met this girl before, but seeing some similarities between his father and the strange girl, he agrees to go with her to Arvashulan, a country not on any map, in an effort to find his father. I personally really enjoyed the story. It had a lot of feel-good moments and didn't really get stale at all. It felt as if I was playing an anime, to be honest. The characters also vibe incredibly well together, often playing off of each other, which can result in some very, very humorous moments. It was definitely my favorite part of the game. Have you ever started playing a game and got that instant retro feel? The gameplay of Monochrome Mobius feels like that. The gameplay mechanics absolutely feel like they belong in a game released in 2009. Combat is simple, you have regular attacks, you have techs that use MP, item, defend, and flee. The gimmick of Monochrome Mobius is it has an action ring and a zeal system. The action ring is composed of 3 layers and is like your ATB gauge. To get your turn, your characters need to reach the bottom of the ring. Units of the inner ring get more frequent turns than units on the outer rings. There are 2 main ways to make your way towards the inner rings. Either attack a staggered enemy, which is denoted by stars above their heads, or enter Zeal mode and use Ascend. To my knowledge, Zeal mode has no other use other than enabling the use of Ascend. I didn't notice any additional damage or damage reduction when under the effect of Zeal. Outside of combat, the game feels like a late PS2 RPG. There is an overworld map, so running between towns isn't just point and click like a lot of RPGs these days, so that was definitely a breath of fresh air. Dungeons are few and far in between, most of the encounters take place on this world map. Speaking of which, if you're a big fan of power leveling, the game gets really easy as each character has an overworld attack. If you're a high enough level, you can entirely bypass enemies and kill them on the world map, gaining experience, money, and any possible item drops, making grinding super easy. Monochrome Mobius also employs a quest system. There are many quests in the game, and unfortunately it suffers from fetch and hunt quests. It's usually collect these items or defeat this enemy, and then return them to the quest giver for rewards. The interactions with them are super neat, however, and I feel those are worth going through the quest for. Later on in Chapter 5, you meet an NPC who gives you rewards based on how many quests you have completed. These can range from equipment to healing items to money and experience, in addition to whatever the quest gives you individually. Around this time, you can start to invest in shops. Throughout the game, you can get materials from combat and search points on the map. You can get these materials and donate them to shops. In doing so, it will raise the shop levels and have them offer new and better equipment. I was so happy that this is what the materials were used for. I was afraid that later on in the game they were going to introduce a crafting system. I despise crafting systems with a passion, so this made me happy. Similarly to the shop investing system, you get a cute little mascot character in Chapter 3 named Halu. Halu is a little pink plush character who can transform into a robot of death and destruction. In Chapter 5, you get the ability to augment him and teach him new abilities by feeding him materials. These abilities he can get either help him in battle with new techniques, or they can help your party by restoring their HP and MP or letting you dash for longer on the world map. It keeps the game fresh and stops it from getting quite stale. Holy colors, Batman! For a game with the title Monochrome in it, I was not expecting something like this. The game is super bright and colorful, and even better if you have HDR enabled. The game is absolutely breathtaking, the environments are huge, and they don't seem at all similar to one another. You have the standard grassy fields, but then you have deep forests, dark sewers, and expansive deserts. They look absolutely wonderful, and have more detail than I would have expected. The art style gives me old-timey Japan vibes for sure. Definitely reminds me of 80s anime. I found it quite pleasant to look at and was not at all offensive to the eyes. Continuing with the old-timey Japan theme, the music in the game feels as if it is right from that era. Lots of windpipe organs and string instruments making up every composition. Very calm and mellow music, even including in the battle system. You knew I had to mention the battle music in one aspect or another. The music is relaxing and hits perfect at every moment. Now, I know I'm going to hit a few nerves here, but I wish this game had an English dub. Unfortunately, Monochrome Mobius only features Japanese voices. Don't get me wrong, it definitely fits with the themes of the game. However, I enjoy having an English dub option. I find it much easier to get invested in a game when there are English voices, as I feel it much easier to sense the emotion in the voices. That being said, Japanese voices don't ruin it, but one thing I really wish developers would get on with would be subtitling flavor dialogue when you only have Japanese voices as an option. By flavor text, I mean things like slogans at the end of battle, or voices you hear while running through towns. It's not the end of the world kind of situation, but I personally feel it would make the localization feel more complete. Monochrome Mobius is a relatively average length for an RPG. It took me about 50 hours to do most of the content in the game, about 90% of the quests alongside the main story. That length could have been expanded if I had explored the maps a bit more and focused more on shop and Halu investing. The pacing is all over the place. You have some scenes that are short and sweet, then you have other portions that end up being like 40 minutes long. It is to be expected, as the Utawari Ramono series in itself is a visual novel series. However, sometimes individual scenes are just too long, you just want to get on with the slicing and dicing. Monochrome Mobius, while nothing special in the gameplay department, absolutely excels from the characters and stories. However, this being said, if you're looking for a pseudo-visual novel type RPG with a heartwarming and sweet story, definitely pick it up. Personally, I wouldn't suggest it for $60, but if you're big on anime cliche storylines, it might be worth it for you. What were your thoughts on Monochrome Mobius? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. So welcome to my first thoughts on the Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails, originally released in 2012 for the PlayStation Portable exclusively in Japan. This remaster is the first time the West has seen this title properly localized. Developed by Falcom and published by NIS America, released for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and PC via Steam on September 19th. Speaking of which, thanks going out to NIS America for providing me with an early release copy of this game for review purposes. Before I get too into my thoughts of this game, I just want to mention that The Legend of Nayuta is not directly related to any of the previous Trails games. It shares the Kiseki namesake, however story-wise it is standalone and has no connection to any other of the Kiseki titles. With that being said, you can play it without having any other Trails experience and still have a great time. Just a disclaimer, all the footage and my first thoughts are from the prologue chapter of the game. Spoilers should not be present, but be cautious anyways. Everything that you are seeing is captured from the Nintendo Switch version of the game. Anyways, pull up a chair, grab a drink, and take a listen to my first thoughts and opinions on The Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails. Normally, when talking about a game, I want to start with story, but I want to get the negativity out of the way first. The Legend of Nayuta makes it incredibly clear that it is a PSP port. The models and backgrounds have been slightly cleaned up here and there, but they still look very early 3D. I can deal with that, just throw a smoothing filter and update the game to 1080p or 4K and I'm alright with that. However, that's not the real culprit. The true culprit is the bloom. This game constantly looks like you have the brightness cranked up 3 full notches, resulting in the game looking overly bright but somehow washed out. This seems to mostly be limited to outside of dungeons and in cutscenes. It just looks very off. It's not just the brightness of the TV. I've checked in handheld and on multiple different TVs and monitors. It's just overly bright for no reason. You can kind of adjust to it, but it still feels quite a bit off. Okay, now that the rough stuff is out of the way, let's get into the more positive aspects. The game starts with your main hero Nayuta returning to his home, Remnant Island. Nayuta is a researcher off to look for a mysterious land called Lost Heaven, just like his parents before him. After training and helping out a few of the town folks, a meteor crashes on a Remnant Island and a fairy appears, eventually opening up a portal to Lost Heaven Nayuta and his late parents have been searching for. It's relatively cliche, but fun nonetheless. The characters from the get-go are cute and very friendly faces. You have the super positive main hero who believes he can do anything he puts his mind to, his tough but protective older brother who sometimes acts like a jerk, and his sister who is more or less a homemaker. I personally like the characters thus far and really enjoy their interactions. The gameplay of The Legend of Nayuta honestly feels if you took the Ys series, stripped it down to the main basics, restricted exploration to a linear path, and separated areas into stages and threw in a Trails quest system. So far, you have one main 4-hit combo, a dodge roll, and a double jump. Stages consist of platforming and killing monsters with your sword. It's basic, but it's fun. This format might seem a bit off being played on a home console. However, as a portable game, which it was originally designed for, it works really well. When you are in Nayuta's hometown, you can help the townspeople with quests very similar to Trails in the Sky or Trails of Cold Steel. These quests can be something like getting a guard his lunch, or doing training with your teacher. I didn't have much experience with quests at this point, but they seem relatively simplistic. One thing that threw me off with the quests is instead of talking to people with the main talk button, there's a specialized quest button. Seems like an odd inclusion, but it seems to work well, I guess. Overall, the game plays very well. It's quick and snappy, the boost of 60 FPS is incredibly nice. I didn't recognize any frame drops on the Switch version, definitely a smooth experience. Music. My favorite part of every Falcom game. Not a surprise, as Falcom sound team JDK is solid with every game that they do. The music has a very calm theme to it. It's not super upbeat like the Ys series, though there are a few headbangers. I would relate it closer to the Trails series as far as compositions go. Falcom constantly knocks out of the park in the music department, and Nayuta is no different. Many different songs, and every one of them are enjoyable. That's one thing you can always expect. When you have a Falcom game, you're gonna have some amazing music. It really carries the game and the developer as a whole. Overall, I've really enjoyed what I've played. Outside of the strange decision to go with the incredible amounts of bloom alongside the stiff animations and models, The Legend of Nayuta has been a very enjoyable experience so far. I'm looking forward to playing more of this game. Are you? Or have you already picked up The Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails? If so, what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below. If you want more JRPG content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Welcome back to Shinky JRPGs, everyone, and welcome to my review of Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtuous. Released on October 3rd in North America and October 6th in Europe for the PlayStation 4 and 5, Switch, and PC via Steam. Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtuous is the latest entry in NIS America's long-running strategy RPG series. All the footage that you will be seeing today has been taken from the Nintendo Switch version of the game. Speaking of which, big thanks to NIS America for providing me with a review copy of the game. So strap yourselves in, grab yourselves a drink, and get ready to hear my thoughts and opinions on Disgaea 7 Vows of the Virtuous. I'm not going to go too into the story of Disgaea 7. After all, it is best experienced from scratch with no knowledge of what's to come. I will, however, go into the very on-the-surface basics. You play the role of Fuji, a lone samurai from the Netherworld on a mission to collect the 7 weapons of origin to defeat the Waido Shogunate. The story of Disgaea 7 is as ridiculous and over the top with its humor as each previous entry in the series. Disgaea 7 gets rid of the classic Netherworld that we've grown to love that has been used in previous entries, and instead changes it up with an Eastern-style Netherworld. This game heavily leans into the feudal Japan era and makes it feel fresh, almost as if it's a reboot. It's amazing how just changing the setting of a game can make it feel so much more original, despite the mechanics being almost identical to previous entries. Speaking of gameplay mechanics, so, as I stated before, the Disgaea franchise is a strategy RPG series. It stands out in the sense that it's more or less number porn. Most games have stats that max out at 99, 255, or 999. Disgaea, meanwhile, it's not uncommon to have stats in the tens to hundreds of millions, and damage numbers in the similar range. Most mechanics from previous entries return, but Disgaea 7 introduces a couple new mechanics. The first mechanic is Hell Mode. Hell Mode is available to wielders of the 7 weapons of origin. It is a mode that grants a special stat buff and allows the use of a move only available in that specific Hell Mode. It lasts for 1 turn and can easily turn the tide of battle. The second new mechanic introduced in battles is Jumbify. Jumbify is like if you decided you wanted kaiju battles in a Disgaea game. When you choose to Jumbify, you pick one of the 4 sides of the combat arena and you grow into a giant version of yourself, massively increasing your attack power and letting you attack in a 7x7 square, making it easy to take out large groups of enemies in a single blow. Enemies can Jumbify as well. However, to my experience, outside of bosses, enemies only Jumbify if you do it first. It's not really strategy, but it's fun to grow up to be a giant and crush the enemies like they're little ants. The item world returns in Disgaea 7, however, it's been changed lately. For those unaware, item world is where you can enter an item and climb floors to power up that item. In previous entries, you could climb 10 floors for a common item, 25 floors for rare items, and 100 floors for a legendary item. However, in Disgaea 7, common, rare, and legendary items only have 10, 20, and 30 floors accordingly. The big change comes with item reincarnation. Item reincarnation works like your character reincarnation, which you can reduce the item's level to 1 but with increased stats. Once reincarnated, you can go through the item world for that item again, allowing it to get even higher stats than before. It's a bit of a change, but it technically allows for infinite growth of that item. Also, tell me I'm not alone in this, but when playing Disgaea games, does anyone else find themselves just grinding out one character and just soloing the entire game with that character? I don't think to this date I have played through a Disgaea game without being severely overleveled and destroying the final boss in a single attack. It's incredibly anticlimactic, but oh so very, very satisfying. Okay, so the graphics and performance was one thing I was incredibly nervous about. For a little bit of context, Disgaea 6 on the Nintendo Switch ran terribly. There's no sugarcoating it. Like, we're not talking, oh it's having trouble hitting 30 FPS. Disgaea 6 on the Nintendo Switch was lucky if it hit 15 FPS. Luckily, Disgaea 7 is not nearly as bad. That's not to say it's a perfect 30 FPS at all times, but the frame rate is serviceable at best. Most of the frame rate issues are at the base and not in battle. The only time I really noticed the frame rate in battle was during the spell Braveheart and during Jumbify. Though for the most part during battle, the frame rate is fine. The game offers a performance mode and a graphics mode, however I didn't notice it looking any better in graphics mode over performance. Just leave it on performance. These issues are only present in the Switch version of the game. On the PS4, PS5, and PC, the game runs smooth as butter, though on graphics mode on those versions, the game does run at 30 FPS. Again, I just stick with performance. The game looks beautiful in performance mode, there's no need for a higher resolution. Alright, now as for the music. The OST of Disgaea 7 was composed by Takeshi Matsumoto, also known for The Cruel King and the Great Hero and Last Claudia. Disgaea 7 was his first time composing for the Disgaea series, and you can definitely tell as the soundtrack feels very different from previous entries. Now, as someone who knows absolutely nothing about music and just takes it in as he hears it, I personally really enjoyed the music of Disgaea 7. There was a lot of wind chimes in the music, adding into the whole Eastern setting that the game has, and occasionally you almost get like a soft rock feel to the music. That's usually reserved for boss battles, however, it fits it perfectly. The music isn't by any means amazing or mind-blowing, but it was enjoyable, and that's okay. Now, as somebody who has spent over 100 hours with Disgaea 7, the length and pacing is a bit more complicated than just beating the final boss. With Disgaea, the main story is there, but it's not the main focus. It's relatively short, but the main meat and potatoes of the game is in post-game. The main game of Disgaea 7 took me about 20 to 25 hours, but post-game involves a lot of item world grinding as well as super bosses that require insane amount of grinding. This is where those ridiculously high stats come to mind. The post-game of Disgaea 7 is much more extensive than 6 was, which is a good thing because Disgaea 6 had an incredibly lackluster post-game. It was disappointing. I'm glad NIS America put more effort into the post-game of Disgaea 7, adding almost infinite levels of enjoyment. It would not be unheard of to have 300 to 700 hours of gameplay by the time you're done everything that the post-game has to offer. Overall, Disgaea 7 is a great breath of fresh air to a seemingly diminishing series. The new mechanics, while some can be gimmicky, others were really fun to play around with and it made the game enjoyable. I would happily suggest this game to any fans of strategy RPGs and over-the-top animations and humor. Are you going to be picking up Disgaea 7? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in and have a wonderful day. At this point, I've gotten a decent number of reviews under my belt, and this is one that I've been incredibly excited to do. It was the whole reason I decided to review the Tales series. Welcome back to Shinky JRPGs, and welcome to my Tales of Eternia review. Tales of Eternia was a JRPG released on the original PlayStation in 2000 and on the PSP in 2005. This game may look similar to a game named Tales of Destiny 2. That is because they are the exact same game. Back when it was initially localized back in 2001, Mattel owned the copyright to the term Eternia with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, which led to the name change. despite 2 years later getting an actual Tales of Destiny 2 on the PS2. It's led to confusion all over the place, kind of like North America's Final Fantasy 2 and 4 debacle. This game was actually my very first Tales game, and was the one that solidified my love of the series and JRPGs as a whole. I remember it quite vividly. I was in high school at the time. I went to go visit a friend, and he had rented this strange game I had never seen before. He was playing Tales of Eternia. He was on the Volt boss battle. He handed me a controller, which had thrown me for a loop because an RPG that's multiplayer? That doesn't happen. I had never played an action RPG quite like it before, and as they say, the rest is history. Anyways, strap yourselves in, grab a drink, and get ready to hear about my thoughts and opinions on Tales of Eternia. Tales of Eternia begins with your main hero, Reed Herschel, a hunter from the backwater town of Rasheen's, along with his childhood friend Farah Orsted, a farmhand from the same village. Speaking of which, while these characters are a hunter and a farmhand, these two traits of them are never again alluded to throughout the entire game, save for maybe 1 or 2 mentions here or there. Seems somewhat pointless. You would think there would be like a hunting or a farming side quest somewhere in the game, but unfortunately not. Anyways, back on topic. One day, they see a giant orb fall from the sky, and they go to inspect it. In the wreckage, they find a strange little girl who cannot speak English. They take her to the village elder, who wants to get rid of her because she could be the disaster that could fall upon the village due to her having dark skin and unintelligible speech. Yeah, this is actually said in the game. Anyway, as this girl is not welcome in the village, Reed and Farah decide to take this girl named Meredy to the local university to see if they can find someone who knows where she might be from or understand the language that she's speaking, and off goes our adventure. So just a little bit of a forewarning, just a little bit of a trigger warning, mentioning racism. One of the concepts of this game as it starts is racism, a seemingly common theme when it comes to the Tales series. Meredy is a girl that has come from the land of Celestia, another planet that coexists with our hero's land of Inferia. The history of Inferia states that anything from Celestia will cause disaster to the land of Inferia, so naturally Meredy is not welcome in Inferia. Our party has to hide the fact that she is Celestian. This leads to many JRPG cliches, such as being thrown in jail, or having Meredy run off when someone confronts her. Luckily, the whole concept of racism isn't exactly a main focus, but it does happen, so just a warning if that's something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Spoiler warning, everyone gets along in the end. The gameplay of Tales of Eternia was such a huge jump compared to 1997's Tales of Destiny. While Destiny used the enhanced linear motion battle system, Tales of Eternia gets what's called the aggressive linear motion battle system, or ALMBS. Did you know that each Tales game has a unique name for its battle system? No? Well then you, sir and or madam, learned something today, and I think that deserves a like and a sub. Anywho, regarding the battle system changes from Destiny, first of all, you have a manual mode giving you full control over your player character available almost from the get-go, and it only requires a key item, as opposed to wasting an accessory slot. Secondly, no longer do spells fully freeze the screen while the animation goes off. They briefly freeze the screen for a split second while the screen moves over to the caster for visual appeal, and then the spell goes off, allowing full movement and control while the spell is in effect. The only limitation to this is you can only have one mid-tier or higher spell going off at one time. For example, you can't have Meteor Storm and Indignation in animation at the same time. This actually works with enemies as well, so if you have Meteor Storm going off, an enemy spell will not go off, which means you have extra time to cancel that spell in case the spell in animation doesn't hit the enemy. I'd say that's a worthy trade-off if you ask me. Combos for characters are unique per character in this one. So you have your spellcasters like Max, Heal, and Meredy. They don't have any combo ability. Outside of Max, later on you can cancel his spells into each other. And then you have Chat, which only has one type of attack, so she can do a couple attacks and then a special attack. Now with Reed and Farah, it's a little bit different. Reed can do up to 3 attacks into a level 1 skill, into a level 2 skill. And then Farah is very unique when it comes to combat. So Farah can attack twice, and then she can use a ground ability, and then a ground to air ability, and then an air to ground ability. So she has a little bit more combo potential, which really opens it up. Tales of Eternia as a whole was quite a bit faster than the precursors in the series, making it much more enjoyable and more of an engaging battle system, as opposed to Phantasia and Destiny, where it resulted to just running towards the enemy, attacking, and then running back to your starting position over and over and over. In addition to that, Tales of Eternia added quite a bit of mini-games. You have games like Cramo Ball, where you're supposed to use bursts of energy to control a giant ball and crush your opponent with it. And then you have Whis. Whis is a very enjoyable minigame. It's essentially Uno, but instead of colors and numbers, you're using elements and attack cards. I'm awful at it, but it's still fun. Though I do wish that you could play Whis with your friends, but unfortunately that's not available. But I mean, I guess you can always play Uno. Exploration in Tales of Eternia also goes over the top. Areas are much bigger and have many more hidden areas. In addition, you also have hidden items such as lens. There are 60 lens in the game that you can find. Every 10 lens you're given a reward that cannot be found anywhere else, and they're usually quite good rewards, such as accessories that block status effects or reduce elemental damage. And Tales of Eternia is where the Wonder Chef started. The Wonder Chef is an NPC who likes to hide as inanimate objects, something like a giant plant, or an anchor, or a piggy bank. At one point, he even imitates the town drunk. If you find him, he will teach you a recipe, and you can cook to add a whole plethora of effects, such as healing HP or TP, or curing statuses. Tales of Eternia is the first game that had a cooking system. It was not available in the original Phantasia or the original Destiny. They were using food sacks up until Tales of Eternia. So having a Wonder Chef really encouraged you to explore every nook and cranny in the game. Towns and dungeons are explored in typical Tales fashion. However, the encounter rate of some of these dungeons are absolutely insane. Thankfully, you have holy bottles to reduce the encounter rate. Sometimes it felt as if they were 100% necessary though, as you would get into encounters every 2 to 3 steps and it's incredibly frustrating. Luckily, encounters in puzzle rooms generally get shut down, so you can focus on the puzzles instead of raging at overly frequent encounters. Graphics are another huge change from the previous Tales games. While Destiny and Phantasia used a chibi art style, the art style of Tales of Eternia is more of a realistic humanoid style with accurately portrayed limbs and torsos. As per most Tales titles, Tales of Eternia is very colorful and very pleasing to look at. Especially with top-notch pixel art, it's really a treat for the eyes. The game still goes with an anime art style, which is shown in the skit system. Unfortunately, in the English version, skits are devolved to only tell you which direction to go to progress with the plot. In the Japanese version, the skits are like future Tales games with silly conversations between the characters to enhance character development. I personally have no idea why this was changed, but at least they weren't entirely removed. While I adore and love Tales of Eternia, it's by no means the perfect game. I feel like Tales of Eternia probably has the weakest soundtrack in the series. That's not to say it's bad by any means at all. Other Tales games just outshine it in the OST department. Tales of Eternia does have some amazing music. For example, Eternal Mind, which you may have heard of if you play Tales of Xillia 2, it's used as Ludger's ringtone in that game, originated in Tales of Eternia, as well as the Van Altaia sailing music, and of course, Ability Test, the battle theme from Tales of Phantasia. As for the battle music in Tales of Eternia, some of them are amazing, such as the aforementioned Ability Test, as well as Inferior Battle and Mid-Boss 2, which is almost like some sort of music before dubstep was a thing. Like, seriously, just listen to it. See? Dubstep. Time Battle is a remix of Deus' battle theme from Tales of Phantasia, and it's beautiful. Like I said, it has some good tunes, but I feel overall the music in Eternia is a step down from other Tales games. Wait a minute, hold up, I can't forget to talk about the voice acting. Now, the localization of this game only has English voice acting, which was a first for the series as Destiny and Phantasia only had the Japanese dub. And I can only explain this English voice acting as comical. You have incredibly underacted parts, such as Reed saying a lot of his tech names like Demon Hammer,
Demon Hammer!
or Omega Demon Chaos.
Omega Demon Chaos!
Then you have some cutscenes that are absolutely ridiculous and overacted for literally no reason at all.
Keel, why are you quiet? Why are you looking at me like that?
Oh, for love to bloom
Shut up!
All the voice acting is terrible, but it's the good type of terrible, making you look forward to the next voice cutscene so you can see just how much of a dumpster fire the voicing in that scene is. You know what they say, good is fine, but terrible keeps you coming back asking for more. Okay, no one says that, but they should, because it's a good saying. Right? It is, isn't it? So, how long should you expect to spend with Tales of Eternia? Well, Tales of Eternia has a ton of side content. You could blast through the game in 20 to 30 hours if you just focus on main story and ignore most, if not all of the side content, or you can easily spend upwards of 70 hours. On average though, I'd say the game is about 45 to 50 hours on a casual first playthrough where you don't ignore every non-mandatory side quest. I will mention, however, if you want to play through the game a second time, you can actually do an extra bonus dungeon with a super boss, so that'll add quite a bit of time to your gameplay because there is a lot of grinding involved. Pacing wise, the game isn't too bad. No really long cutscenes that will have you screaming, just get on with it, and cutscenes don't really drag on. They're pretty short and sweet, letting you get back to the gameplay relatively quickly without feeling like the cutscene was a waste of time. So yes, Tales of Eternia, while my favorite game in the series, does have its shortcomings. Would I go ahead and say it's the best game in the series? Not quite, but it's in the top 3 as far as I'm concerned. Hey, maybe I should do a top Tales games video. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in the comments below. While you're at it, give the video a like and subscribe. Have you played Tales of Eternia before? What were your thoughts on it? Do you have a story or history with the game? Let me know. I'm always in the comments to interact with the community. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in and have a wonderful day. Oh, hello there. My name is Shinky. Welcome to Shinky JRPGs and welcome to my review of Eternal Sonata. Have you ever played a game where the moment you turn it on, you realize that the game was going to be an incredible experience unlike any other that you've ever experienced before? Eternal Sonata is a game that fits that vibe perfectly. Before we get into everything, let me know if there's any games that you've played that instantly gave you that same feeling. Anyways, Eternal Sonata was released on June 14th, 2007 on the Xbox 360 and September 18th, 2008 on the PlayStation 3. So, what exactly makes this game so special? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about today. So pull up a chair, grab a drink, and get ready to hear what makes Eternal Sonata stand up above all other JRPGs. So, the story of Eternal Sonata is something I've never really seen in any game before. The story is based off of a true event, albeit quite loosely, but it does take inspiration from a real person. This person is the classical composer Frédéric Francois Chopin, who passed away on October 17, 1849. The whole game is Chopin's dream world as he lies on his deathbed. The actual story of that is pretty decent as well. The game starts with a girl that is jumping off a cliff into the ocean. No explanation is provided. She jumps off a cliff seemingly to her death. Then all of a sudden the game cuts to a nice field with the same girl, who we come to know is named Polka, going to the town of Ritardando to sell floral powder. However, due to the country of Forte increasing the taxes so substantially, no one is able to buy it and afford it, and would much rather use the cheaper option of mineral powder instead. One night, Polka meets Frederick, and Polka convinces him to come with her to Forte Castle to try and convince him to reduce the taxes on floral powder so people can afford it for their health, as mineral powder seems to have a detrimental effect. Along the way, several friends are made in typical RPG fashion, and on starts our story. I personally wish this could have become a series. The idea of having a game based on a real-life composer is wonderful. I'm sure this is by no means what was going through Chopin's mind as he was on his deathbed, but it's a great premise for an RPG. It's a shame that this game didn't end up being part of a series. Instead, it's the only game in this IP. It's really too bad that Namco passed up this chance. Eternal Sonata has to be one of the most unique RPGs gameplay-wise that I've ever seen. In towns, it's very reminiscent of PS2 RPGs, probably because this game did come out very early into the Xbox 360 lifespan. You have various NPCs that you can talk to, typical save points, and so on. No overworld like a lot of RPGs of its time, and the game is incredibly linear. Generally, once you go through an area, you can't return to previous areas. There is some backtracking, but it's very rare. The unique feature with NPCs in this game is you can actually play music with them. As you explore, you will find score pieces. You can then use these score pieces and play music with various NPCs. Get a good ranking, and you will get an item or an accessory. This is generally how you get most accessories in the game. I kind of ignored a good amount of the scores and NPCs on my playthrough, and I noticed near the end of the game I really didn't have much of an option of accessories. So it's really something that you might want to keep an eye on. There are quite a few missables, but as long as you're one of those people that likes to check every area, you'll be fine. The game does have a decent amount of side quests as well, which can result in new costumes, new items, money, or even accessories. They are by no means necessary, but they do help quite a bit. The battle gameplay is where the real uniqueness of Eternal Sonata comes out. Eternal Sonata is a hybrid of an action RPG and a turn-based RPG, and the combat system evolves as you get further in the game. So the basics of combat is you have an attack combo, a guard button, a skill button, and an item button. Once your turn comes up, you can move as you see fit, and as you move, your action time gauge drops. You have until the action gauge drops to 0 seconds to do any action you'd like, either attack, skill, or items. Guarding is done in a reactionary type method, where when your enemy attacks, you have a split second to press the guard button, and if you hit the guard button, you will reduce damage. Anyways, during battle, typically you use your action time to run up to your enemies, attack until almost out of time, and then press the skill button to finish your enemies off. The game starts very slow and bland and basic. However, as you progress with the plot, you start to unlock a higher party level, which has more combat features and more of a risk-reward system. For example, Party Level 1 has unlimited tactical time to decide what you're going to do on your turn, and the action gauge only drops when you're actually performing an action. Party Level 2 introduces echoes to power up your special attacks, but now your action gauge will continually drop once you start moving. It makes combat a bit more difficult, but also gives you more combat features or item slots, making the extra risk worth it. Luckily, the game gives you enough time to get used to the new combat features and restrictions before introducing you to the next level, so you don't feel rushed or feel like you're still getting used to the new system. The skill system is what I feel really sets Eternal Sonata apart from other RPGs. You have one skill button and 2 skill slots, one light skill and one dark skill. The way you pick and choose between skills is dependent on where you are standing. If you are standing in the light, you will use your light skill. If you are standing in a shadow, you will use your dark skill. There are equipment and usable items in the game that can force you to either be in the light or be in the dark regardless of where you are standing. These can be helpful. For example, if you are fighting a boss and want a character to be a dedicated healer, you might equip them with something that gives them the Shining Body status, so they always have access to their healing ability. As your party level raises, you eventually get access to a second light and dark skill, used by holding R2, allowing for more options. The PlayStation 3 port of this game added a bunch of features and rebalanced the game generally to make it harder. It adds a few new costumes, 2 dungeons, 1 mandatory and 1 optional, reduced the experience gained in battle, changed the levels which you learn certain abilities, and added new story cutscenes to make the story make some actual sense. Also, in battle, your starting position is randomized now, so battles don't feel as repetitive. There are also 2 new playable characters, Crescendo and Serenade. However, all they are battle characters. They don't show up in cutscenes or anything. It seemed a bit shallow, but it's nice to have more battle options. I personally really enjoyed using Serenade as a healer. So, the first thing I realized when I started playing this game again is, wow. For a game initially released in 2007, this game looks beautiful. It definitely did not look like a game from 16 years ago. The game is so bright and colorful, the cel-shaded graphics aged incredibly well. The only thing I complain about is a lot of the skills in battle look similar, just with a different color effect. It's not a deal breaker, but a little bit of originality would have been nice. I really enjoyed the character designs in this game. Characters like Fugue, Count Waltz, and Falsetto were just a few of my favorites. I wouldn't say any characters though were uninspired, they all look super good. Well done to the character designer for sure. So, for a game that takes inspiration from a classical composer, it should not be a surprise that the sound of the game is extraordinary. First of all, before we get into the actual music of the game, the whole game's theme is music. Almost everything in the game is based around this musical theme. Every character, every dungeon, and every town has something to do with music in one way or another. Some examples of this are you have playable characters such as Allegretto, Beat, March, and Jazz. Then you have bosses like Tuba, Fugue, and Waltz, or towns like Ritardando and Forte. And I really like how the theme of the game fits into everything. Even the title of the game is Eternal Sonata. It's really a quite genius way of naming everything. As for the music, it's only fitting for it to have a lot of piano compositions, considering the whole game is based on a dream by Chopin. It's not exclusively piano, but it is a common instrument in a lot of the music in the game. The game even has brief moments where they include actual Chopin compositions and explains the history of the composer. The game was composed by Motoi Sakuraba, and it honestly has to be some of his most relaxing work. It's just so gentle and so calm. It really conveyed the fact that the game in itself was taking place in a dream world before somebody's death. Anyways, this next part is not a complaint, but maybe a pet peeve. Do you remember how back in the PlayStation 2 and early PlayStation 3 era, how every anime and JRPG seemed to have the same voice actors? As somebody who absolutely adores the Tales series, I couldn't help but notice how so many voice actors seem to also play roles in that series. For example, you have Johnny Young Bosch, who played Guy in Tales of the Abyss, and Emil in Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World. He also plays Fugue in Eternal Sonata. Or then again, you also have Sam Riegel, who played Flynn in Tales of Hesperia, and Jude in Tales of Xillia. He also plays Allegretto in Eternal Sonata. Now, it doesn't ruin the experience, but it definitely does take you out of the whole experience a little when you recognize the voice actors from a different piece of media, especially when those voices are very easily recognizable from one of your favorite series of all time. The voice acting is good, be it in English or Japanese, but it just kind of gripes me, so to speak. Eternal Sonata is not a very long game, but there is a reason for that. A standard playthrough without touching any of the bonus content will probably run you about 30 to 40 hours, depending on how much grinding you need to do. The 360 original is a little bit shorter than that, only because it doesn't have all the dungeons on the PlayStation 3 port, all the story scenes on the PlayStation 3 port, and the experience is higher, making it so that you don't have to grind as much. However, while Eternal Sonata is a bit on the short side for a JRPG, this is because the game is designed for multiple playthroughs. As you cannot unlock all your content on your first playthrough, you'll have to load your save file and play the game again on Encore mode. Encore mode is sort of a hard mode where enemies are stronger and you can unlock more content, such as the second optional dungeon and extra costumes. In the end, if you really want to see all the content, you're probably looking at about 65 to 70 hours. I personally did not do Encore mode, but I'm not complaining honestly. 40 hours is a respectable length for an RPG. I'd even go ahead and say it's my ideal length for a JRPG. So, Eternal Sonata. It's hard to say that this game is anything less than amazing. It has that very classic JRPG feel, while still looking absolutely gorgeous. The game can be quite difficult at times, and sometimes absolutely unfair, but not enough to ruin the experience at all. Would I suggest this game to you? Well, if you don't mind RPG cliches rapidly thrown at you, you enjoy classical music, and a story that is absolutely depressing, this would 100% be down your aisle for sure. Have you played Eternal Sonata before? Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I'd love to have discussions going on about this beautiful game. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Oh, hello there. I'm Shinky. Welcome to Shinky JRPGs, and welcome to my review for Infinity Strash, Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. Do you remember your first JRPG that introduced you into the genre? That one experience that solidified your love for the genre and made you a lifelong fan? Dragon Quest, at that time known as Dragon Warrior, was that game for me. I was the nice young age of 4, my babysitter was playing Dragon Quest and I had no idea what was going on, but I loved the cute little monsters and the sounds coming from the television. I was taught to play the game at that point, learned how to read because of Dragon Quest, and that's when I started to adore the genre. Now, while all of this is nice and cute, that's where it ends. It's because I love Dragon Quest so much that this game hurt me. The game failed to deliver on so many aspects, but why does it fail to deliver? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about. So pull up a chair, grab a drink, and get ready to dive into Infinity Strash, Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. Okay, so let's start this review off on a positive note. The story of Infinity Strash is incredibly good. It's pretty standard Dragon Quest fare. Infinity Strash focuses on Dai, an orphan who lives on Dermine Island and has always dreamed of becoming a hero. One day, a group of bandits infiltrates Dai's island and kidnaps his buddy Goma-chan, the golden metal slime. During Dai's adventure to rescue Goma-chan, Dai runs into Avan, the trainer of heroes who decides to take Dai on as a pupil to combat the inevitable return of the ancient Dark Lord Hadlar. The story is classic Dragon Quest. Travel across the land, gaining the power to defeat the Dark Lord that has been resurrected. It's nothing new, and it's not anything you haven't seen before, but honestly, it's quite enjoyable. While the story is interesting and fun to experience, I was quite disappointed by how it's delivered to the player. While the story is completely voice acted, most of the cutscenes are nothing but static images. I just found myself getting bored when they talk about high action sequences, but all you see is an image that slowly pans across your screen with a grainy filter on it. It was incredibly disappointing, especially when they're super long with rare gameplay sequences. For those of you that are fans of the anime, the story of Infinity Strash covers about the first 40 episodes. So if you've watched the anime, you know exactly what to expect. It's nice to actually experience the story in another form of media. Anyways, let's get into the gameplay mechanics. So, this is the beginning of my disappointment of the game. When I first saw the trailer of this game, I was incredibly excited. An open world Dragon Quest spin-off? I was pumped. Absolutely thrilled to experience a beautiful world, exploration, sword and magic combos, and hunting out hidden items. Sign me up, I'm all for it. Then I started playing the game. None of this is in the game at all. I've never been so misled by a trailer since Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles: The Crystal Bearers. First of all, there's no world to explore. Dai only has one combo, and no hidden items to hunt for at all. Such a lost opportunity to have an amazing open world action RPG. Really a shame. There are 4 playable characters, however, unfortunately, they all more or less play the same. A single attack combo with various special abilities that don't really combo all that well. The gameplay just feels super clunky, almost budget PS2 action RPG like. At least the party has different types of gameplay. 2 characters are swordsmen, but they share abilities more or less. It makes sense story-wise as they're trained by the same person, but it's still annoying. Anyways, then you have your spellcaster who gets classic spells like Frizz, Crackle, and Boom, and then you have a healer with gun spells. She literally shoots spells out of her gun, and instead of cooldowns, you have to reload the gun so that you can use the spell again. Each character also has a special command. Dai can enter a powered up mode, the spellcaster can hold the button to reduce spell charge time, and the gun mage can reload her gun spells, as well as one super move, or coup de grace, that does incredible amounts of damage. It's nice each character plays a little differently, but the combat just doesn't flow smoothly. It's just super clunky and feels unresponsive because every action has a huge amount of delay afterwards. The delay is especially bad when it comes to your defensive options. You have 2 options for defense. You can guard, or you can parry by guarding right as you get hit, and then you also have a dodge button. It's more effective to just dodge attacks, as it seems to be a delay from when you press guard and the guard actually happens, leading you to take damage when you really shouldn't. Anyways, how about progression? How do you progress in the game from one area to the next? Well, when you are on the world map, you select the next area. There are 3 options. One looks like a book. This is the most common. It's just story, where it's a cutscene delivering the story to you. Then the second most common is a crossed swords icon. This is an action stage. Most of the action stages are just boss fights and don't take very long. Generally about 5 minutes long unless you struggle with the boss fight. It's a bit disheartening though when you watch 40 minutes of cutscenes followed by a 5-minute boss fight and then another hour of cutscenes. This happens several times. Rarely you get a stage that consists of killing all of the enemies. maybe 5 of these stages of the whole game, but they're just linear pathways. You kill all the enemies and then go into the next area. The only exception to this is there is one stage in the whole game where it's a stealth section where you have to make it through to the end without being seen. If you are seen, it's just another kill all the enemies and progress to the next part. I found it easier to do that because the line of sight was a little bit off. Anyways, the last world map icon looks like a monster. These are free battles. Free battles are essentially repeatable battles that are used to level up your characters, but they have separate short side stories. They were a nice break from the incredible amount of long cutscenes. Now, let's talk about the Temple of Recollection, the prime way to power up your characters. The equipment system is in the form of bond memories, short cutscenes that result in obtaining a card. You can equip these cards to increase your character's stats, from magic to strength to critical hit rate and critical hit damage. However, when you get these bond memories, they are relatively weak. So how do you power them up? Well, this is where the Temple of Recollection comes in. In order to power up these bond memories, as well as your skills, you need to traverse through this randomly generated dungeon and collect materials. Then you use these materials and can upgrade the level of your bond memories. Though I find this dungeon incredibly boring, first of all, you start at level 1 each time you enter it, and it's laid out in the form of layers. Each layer has 5 stages. Each stage, you need to kill all of the enemies, and then select a door to go through, focusing on what you want to power up, and then proceed to the next stage and do it all over again. At the 5th floor of each layer, you will fight a boss. After each layer, you can choose whether to go back to the entrance and reap the rewards, or you can continue deeper to get better rewards. It's incredibly repetitive and boring. Unfortunately, until the very late game, this is the only way to power up your skills, and it is the only way to power up your bond memories, so it's necessary unless you want to be severely underpowered. Alright, that's enough. It's time to be positive again. Okay, I know that the gameplay section might have made the game sound absolutely terrible, but trust me, there is a breath of fresh air. Oh my gosh. Infinity Strash is freaking gorgeous. I absolutely adore this art style. Shockingly, the game's art is not done by Akira Toriyama, but instead Koji Inada. Honestly, this game is possibly one of the most beautiful cel-shaded games I have ever played. The brightness and colors really bring every monster, boss, and character to life, and is such a treat for the eyes. Sure, most of the areas are lush forests and dry deserts, but they look so good. I won't lie, that was one of the first things I noticed in the initial trailer. The incredible environments. The rest of the trailer may have disappointed and misled me, but the visuals absolutely did not. The character designs aren't absolutely mind-blowing, but I still think they look great, and I love the monsters. The Dragon Quest monsters are always so amazing, and they have never looked as good as they look now. The colors really make them shine. I never knew trash could look so good. Take this as a lesson. You can have the worst crap in existence, but if it's cel-shaded in HD, at least it'll look good. So, we've talked about the gameplay, we've talked about the story, and the art style, as well as the graphics. So, how is the music? Is it great? Well, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but then again, I wouldn't call it offensively bad either. It's quite middle of the road for me personally. The music during the cutscenes is really well done. In fact, it's pulled right from the anime. Incredibly appropriate. And the music during the gameplay? It's alright. Honestly, no music really stood out for me as extraordinary, but it's enjoyable for sure. Granted, Dragon Quest has never had incredibly stellar music, save for the few common themes such as the standard level up music. And of course, the classic Dragon Quest overture. Classic Dragon Quest, I love it. Unfortunately, none of these themes are in the game at all. So, how long should you expect to spend with Infinity Strash, Dragon Quest, The Adventure of Dai? That name is incredibly long, probably longer than the game itself. Anyways, honestly, it's not a very long game. My main playthrough with doing minimal Temple of Recollection and focusing on story only took me 12 hours. Now, after you beat the game, you do unlock a hard mode, or a challenge mode. However, I really didn't waste my time with it. I had enough of this once I saw the ending. This was kind of a shocker because Dragon Quest titles are generally quite long, where this one just was not. As for pacing, it sucks.
They were the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever sucked.
Yeah, see, Homer knows what's up. The pacing of the game is downright awful. I mentioned it previously, but it's not uncommon to go up to an hour of static image cutscenes, followed by 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay, only to watch another hour of cutscenes. It's honestly exhausting. If I wanted to watch the anime, I would watch the anime. Literal visual novel levels of cutscenes. Get that visual novel out of my action RPG. Shame on you. So, final verdict on the game? Awful. It is by no means worth full price, and honestly, I would just suggest you watch the anime. You will get a much more enjoyable experience at a lower price point. As an incredible fan of Dragon Quest, this game really disappointed me, especially since I was really excited for the game. Honestly, if you really love the anime and want a game that tells the same story, you might enjoy Infinity Strash, but that is a huge might. This is one of the most disappointing games in 2023 that I've played so far. Despite my review and personal opinions, are you picking up Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai? Let me know in the comments below. Or if you've already played it, let me know your thoughts on it. Did you enjoy my review? If so, don't be afraid to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm always hanging out in the comments, and I read and appreciate each and every one of them. Anyways, that's the meat and potatoes, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Quick, what is your favorite fetch quest simulator, and why is it Lufia? Hello there, my name is Justin, and this is Shinky JRPGs, and welcome to my review of Lufia in the Fortress of Doom. Released in 1993, Lufia was the first game in a relatively short-run series consisting of 4 games and a remake that fans of the series prefer to forget exists, due to how terrible it is. I played Lufia in the Fortress of Doom for the first time this week, and I need to give my thoughts on it. Before we get started, hit that like button and tell me, what's your experience with the Lufia series? Have you played any of the games in the series? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, let's get into the review, so strap yourselves in, grab a drink, and let's kick off today's review of Lufia and the Fortress of Doom into overdrive. Do you ever get that urge for a simplistic RPG story that doesn't seem to have too many other meanings and is just given to you straight? A story where you can just sit and enjoy without feeling like you're missing underlying themes? Well, Lufia might be the game for you. It's nothing mind-blowing, and the story has been seen before, but there are a few plot twists that I myself did not see coming. So, what exactly is Lufia about? Well, to bring it down to the most basic, non-spoilery terms, Lufia and the Fortress of Doom starts out with Maxim and his compadres on their way to fight 4 beings named Sinistrals. Almost like you're about to fight a final boss. It seems like it's a little strange for a game to begin this way, but this initial sequence sets up the entire tone of the game. After this initial sequence, the game fast forwards roughly 100 years. Well, it's actually 99 years, but close enough. Anyways, the game then cuts to another red-haired hero. Looks an awful lot like Maxim, doesn't he? Yeah, it's his ancestor. An ancestor of someone who saved the world a century ago. I wonder where this story is going. Definitely not going to have the defeated Sinistrals come back and threaten the world. Spoiler warning, they do. And you're the only one that can save the world. That's the basic of the story of this game. Very cliche, and like I said, nothing mind-blowing, but it has that certain charm to it. Some people might think that this is boring, cliche, and repetitive, but I personally like the simplicity of it. It's really the little things that can bring enjoyment into a game. So, the story is all nice and simplistic. How does Lufia and the Fortress of Doom play? Well, This is a turn-based RPG, a very simplistic one at best. When I say simplistic, Lufia almost feels as if it was an NES RPG with a Super Nintendo coat of paint. While I was playing it, I got a lot of Dragon Quest feels, maybe mixed with a little bit of Final Fantasy in there, but more or less it felt like a very old game that just looked a little bit prettier. Anyways, let's start with the battle system. You have 4 characters, each designated to a specific type. You have your hero, who excels in physical attacks and healing spells. You then have Lufia, a mysterious woman who showed up in your past. She excels in healing and support magic. She also has some attack spells. Next we have the knight Aguro. Aguro is solely a physical attacker, he gets no MP and no spells as a result. And lastly, you have Jaren. Jaren is a half-elf, and as such she is a magic user. She cannot do much physical damage, instead wreaking havoc with her attack spells and support spells. The battle system is basic. You can attack, use spells, use an item, guard, or flee. That in itself is pretty self-explanatory. However, there are a few quality of life changes within the genre that I wish were in Lufia. First of all, there is no auto-retargeting. If you input your attacks for 2 characters, and the enemy dies before the last character gets their turn, any remaining attacks will continue to attack thin air, resulting in wasted attacks. This even goes with magic spells as well, so you could waste MP on thin air for no reason at all. To some, this may seem like a way to keep you from just mashing the A button, but as someone who really started with JRPGs in the PS1 era, this just seems frustrating. Another concern with the battle system is you do not individually target enemies. You attack groups of enemies. Normally, if you are fighting a large group of enemies, you will have your party all attack the same individual enemy in order to lessen the amount of enemies you are fighting at one time. However, with the way the game works, your allies will tend to attack different enemies with each attack, making large groups of enemies way harder to deal with than they need to be. This gets easier as you progress through the game and learn multi-target spells, but early in the game, it just leads to deaths that could be avoided if you could just select specific enemies to attack. And the last concern I have with this game, there are no item and no spell descriptions, which leads to a lot of trial and error to figure out what the spell or item is used for. I'm sure that this was just a case of the descriptions being in the instruction manual, but as someone that played this in 2023, I did not have an instruction manual, so I was on my own to figure out what each spell and item did. My complaints about the battle system really just boil down to this game is old and will be treated as such. They aren't really a problem, but as someone who is used to newer RPGs past the NES era, this came as a bit of a shock to me. So the battle system is the bulk of the gameplay, but what about outside of battle? What's the gameplay loop like? Well, if you've ever played any RPG from the late 80s or early 90s, the gameplay loop is going to be incredibly familiar. You start by entering a town, checking out the weapon and armor shops, buying what you need from said shops, restocking your healing items, raiding various NPCs' houses for items, and then talking to each NPC wandering around town to figure out where to go next. Usually that will lead you to the next dungeon. You then traverse said dungeon, and then you will be directed to the next town. Each town seems to have a little mini-quest tied into the storyline, which is never as simple as it seems. It could be gathering a mythical material for your ship, or finding a mysterious ingredient to feed the king because he's lost his appetite. Some of the quests seem really simplistic, but something else always comes up. It's honestly, they're fetch quests. The game is full of meaningless fetch quests. If you cut those out, you could probably cut the game time down by 10 hours or so. They get really boring. By the end of the game, it got incredibly exhausting. It eventually starts feeling like the game is nothing but fetch quest after fetch quest, almost like it's padding or busy work to extend the length of the game. Anywho, another thing about Lufia and many RPGs of its time is paying attention to dialogue. Now, I know that's to be expected when you're playing RPGs, but there's always those times where you just lose focus and zone out and don't read a couple lines of dialogue. If you don't pay attention to the dialogue and you miss where you're supposed to go next, you will have no way of knowing where to go. There is no journal, there are no quest markers. In fact, there is no map for the overworld whatsoever, which will lead to you just wandering around aimlessly trying to figure out where to go if you happen to miss what an NPC or story scene said. It was just a concept of older RPGs. At least nowadays, we have walkthroughs, so if you do happen to forget or miss what someone said, you have something to fall back on. I'm not a huge fan of walkthroughs, but hey, sometimes if you have no other option, you gotta use the resources available to you. As someone who is very keen of pixel art, it's often very difficult to say anything negative about retro JRPGs. Lufia as a whole is a decent game, but it looks incredibly bland. As the game only has a very limited set of tile sets, most of the dungeons look identical, every tower looks like every other tower, every castle looks like every other castle, and the same goes for every cave. There's not much of a variation. It's hard to tell each dungeon, or worse, every room in that dungeon from one another. It makes for a very bland experience. One positive I can say about the visuals is that Lufia doesn't rely on recolors to signify stronger versions of monsters. If you've played Dragon Quest, for example, you have things like the blue slime, the red slime, the spotted slime, just to show which one is stronger than the other. Lufia does not have that. Every new area in Lufia has entirely new monsters, making that area nice to adventure through. It's especially nice as Lufia has an absolutely insane encounter rate, which results in seeing these monsters over and over and over and, well, you get it. Music! Easily the best part of Lufia. I adored this game's soundtrack to no end. The world map and the airship music were some of my favorite themes, and the entire soundtrack gives whimsical adventure across the countryside vibes and was well suited. Though I did notice a few things. While all the tracks are incredibly well done, remember when I said that all the dungeons and areas seem to feel the same? The music ties into that. Each dungeon has the exact same music. Same goes for towns and homes. There just wasn't enough variation. I also noticed the music tends to suddenly stop and restart instead of properly loop. It's incredibly jarring when you notice it. That being said, of the music that Lufia does have, it's nicely done and it made the experience that much more enjoyable and memorable. For a JRPG, Lufia is relatively short. My playthrough took me about 20 hours. Unfortunately, Lufia does not have much that can deviate from the plot. There's very minimal amounts of side quests. The only thing that may extend the length of the game is the amount of grinding you do or do not do, which the game does not require very much grinding at all. Due to the minimal amount of side quests, the game is incredibly linear, which in turn leads to a nicely paced story. Most of the cutscenes in the game are within 5 minutes long, mostly only being used to direct you to the next point to progress in the game. While playing, you won't ever really feel like a plot point is overstaying its welcome. However, at the same time, nothing really lingers long enough to have an impact on you. Due to this, if you were to ask me anything outside of the first and last couple of hours of Lufia, I wouldn't be able to tell you much for details. It all felt so insignificant and unimportant. So more or less, you had 4 hours of Lufia that was incredibly interesting and like 16 hours of busy work. Yes, it's as blah as it sounds. So, should you play Lufia? Honestly, I feel like there are many better games to spend your time on. I would only suggest that you play Lufia and the Fortress of Doom if you want to dive more into the lore of Lufia and you're a huge fan of the series. Before I started this game, I was told to just skip the original Lufia and play Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals instead. Now, I can see why. This game, while not bad, doesn't really excel at anything. In the end, it just felt like a Dragon Quest clone with a bit of Final Fantasy thrown in. What would I suggest to play instead? You could always try something like Dragon Quest V, arguably the best in the series, Chrono Trigger, which I don't have to explain anything about Chrono Trigger, or the whimsical Earthbound. All somewhat similar, but will offer you a much better experience. Have you played Lufia and the Fortress of Doom? If so, what were your thoughts on it? Did you enjoy it? Let's talk about Lufia in the comments below because I would love to hear your opinions on the game and chat about them. If you enjoy my reviews, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, where you will see me doing top 10s, you will see me doing reviews, you will see me doing the occasional news coverage. I do a little bit of everything here, all focused on JRPGs. Anyways, thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Hi, and welcome to my review for The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie. First and foremost, I just want to thank Nisa for a review copy of this, just for the purpose of providing content for this, and to give my first opinions. I'm going to aim to keep this spoiler free. All the footage that you see is going to be from the PS5 version, from the first chapters of each character's story. So just keep an eye out. I'll try to keep it spoiler free, but I can't guarantee that.
Don't give in!
Thanks.
So a little bit of my history with the Trails series. So back in winter of 2013, I heard a lot of people talking about Trails of Cold Steel, very positively. So that year, Christmas, I got a gift card for GameStop, so I decided, okay, why not give it a shot? I've heard a lot of positive things about it. I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
It's my turn.
I honestly enjoyed it. From that point, I decided, okay, I looked into the series. It has a whole bunch of other games. I saw that on the PSP at the time because that was relevant.
Enemy neutralized.
They had Trails in the Sky, so I gave that a shot. It wasn't really a huge fan of it, just because it's a very slow burning series. So it takes a little bit to get started. I finished it, and then I'm like, okay, I like this series, and then I just continued on. Anyway, so Trails into Reverie released on July 7th, 2023 in North America, and I believe Europe has it on the same date. It got releases on the PS4, PS5, PC, and Nintendo Switch. It's great, but I'll go more into detail on that. So as for the story for this game, the plot takes place over 3 separate character storylines. You have Reen from the Cold Steel series, you have Lloyd from the Crossspell duology, and then you have a mystery character, C. It gets revealed further on. I won't go into details about much about C, just due to it's a huge spoiler. Like, that's for the first half of the game. Like, it's okay, who is this mysterious character that you're playing as?
It's my go.
So as for the plot of this game, I don't suggest jumping into it right away, only because it's essentially a Crossspell 3 or a Cold Steel 5. It takes place after Cold Steel 4, after the whole big plot thing there. Don't want to spoil that either. But it focuses on Crossspell's re-independence, which is like, it's an overarching story of the Crossspell duology.
You're done for. Eat this.
As I stated, there's a little bit of a mystery aspect with who the third storyline character is. Personally, I had an assumption, and then I had another assumption, then I had another assumption, and it ended up being the first assumption. So it's not straightforward. I personally, when I started playing this game, I had literally just came off of playing Cold Steel 4. Like, as in, I finished Cold Steel 4 like 2 days prior, so everything was fresh in my mind. So I would suggest playing them before you do this, because it might be a little bit confusing. As for the story, it does close up a few loose ends from Cold Steel 4. Not the ones you want, but mostly like character arcs, like gives them a little bit of closure, because this is the last game that features the cast from Cold Steel 4 so far. There are a couple other games further on, but they're not done yet. So as for the gameplay mechanics, essentially you're looking at Cold Steel 3 and 4. It uses the same interface. It uses the Brave Order system. However, it does introduce something new called United Fronts. So United Fronts, you need to have at least 5 characters in your party, and then you have an option. You have one that will heal your whole party and give defense buffs. Or you have a magic, which will give you like ATS buff, and then it'll also give you ADF, which is basically magic attack and defense buff. as well as using all of the characters in your party to do a magic attack. And then you have an attack one, which is the same as magic, except instead of magic and attack and defense, it's physical attack and defense. Whenever you use one of those, you get 2 brave points, which can be used for orders. You can buff it so that you get more BP and you do more damage or more healing, but I'll get into that a little bit later. As for customization, it's the same as the Cold Steel games. You get an orbment. Each orbment gives a certain ability. It could be evade plus, it could be new magic attacks, it could be strength buffs. However, it does go a little bit further and beyond, because instead of just the 2 slot levels in your orbments, you now have a 3rd slot level, which also leads to having even higher level courts for your magic attacks or whatever buffs you want. Which I've noticed you get quite a bit more in this. For stats, it's a little bit strange.
It's my turn.
Though the game is a little bit shorter, so it makes sense. In the same sense, accessories got nerfed a little bit. Like, for example, the Passionate Rouge in Cold Steel 3 and 4, they also gave 500 attack, like physical attack, and then they also gave, I think it was burn protection. However, in this game, that specific accessory gives 250, and that's because there's an additional level on top of that. You can get a true Passionate Rouge or a true Deep Ochre or something like that, which has even higher stats. So it's not as easy to get overpowered in this one as it was in Cold Steel 3 and 4. That was my main concern with those games, because they were very, very overpowered, and like the end of the game was very simple, albeit I was playing it on normal, so it's probably more difficult on Nightmare, I'd assume. But yeah, so it's a little, I found it a little bit more difficult until like maybe the last 20% of the game, in which case I was very overpowered at that point, so I was just flying through everything.
Here we go.
So the graphics, this is a hot button issue with so many Trails fans. It is not graphically amazing. Like, I was playing it on PS5, but it's very obvious that it was a PS4 game. Like, they're a little bit better in Cold Steel than Cold Steel, but it's more of the same. It doesn't look amazing. However, I did notice that it doesn't use the repeated motions. Like, when you have your cast talking to each other in Cold Steel 1 to 4, they just repeat the same motions over and over. It seems a little bit different and a little bit more in touch. It's not always an isometric camera angle anymore. It's always, like, it's moving around and the characters feel more alive as opposed to robots. Like, it's not amazing, but it's not terrible by any means. It's much better. It felt much more higher quality than Cold Steel 1 to 4. For the music, okay, so since there are 3 different storylines,
I shall go.
So the storylines have different music. Each piece of music, it gets better and better. Numerous times while I was playing this, I thought to myself, this is the best music in the series. And then it happened again. And then again. And then again. So it was really good. It kept on getting better. Some of the boss themes they're absolutely amazing. Now, this isn't a shock.
Engaging.
Because Falcom JDK, the band that does all the music for all the Ys games, all the Trails games, and anything Falcom, they're amazing. They have some of the best music in anything. Like, I absolutely adore it, and this just did so much better. Like, as I'm playing the game, I'm just like, I want to hear the next theme because it's different. It's great. I loved it. It was so good. So for world building in this, it's not substantial. There's not very much of it. Like, it does do a few things, but nothing that
Numbers
really
up.
contributes to the whole like universe of Zamiria. It relies on knowing the backstory of the Crossspell games and the Cold Steel
My
games.
turn.
Kind of a little tiny bit, because with Liberal, like the Trails in the
I shall
Sky
go.
games, not so much. I mean, Joshua and Estelle are in the game, but it doesn't really go into details about it. They talk about it a few times, but they don't go into details about it. I would not suggest playing this game if you haven't at least played the Crossspell Duology or the Cold Steel games. If you
Battle complete.
must, because
Let's
this
continue.
game does not have a backstory. It doesn't have an option. Either watch something that goes into details or play them yourself. I highly suggest you play the other games in the series because they are some of the best storytelling I've ever experienced in any RPG. They're great. Yeah, so as I stated, it focuses on Crossspell. As for side quests,
Everyone
so
ready?
Trails into Reverie introduces something called the Reverie Corridor. Now, this is not the Reverie Corridor from Cold Steel 1. It's entirely different. So Reverie Corridor is an optional dungeon that is randomly generated.
My turn.
It lets you recruit characters through a gacha type system that are only to be used in that dungeon. And the Reverie Corridor is mostly used for powering up your abilities as well. So, for example, you can get
Listen.
more
Even crystal.
max brave points. You start at
My turn.
5, I believe. You start at 5, and then you can max out at 8. Same with the assault gauge. You start with 2. I don't know what you can max out at.
Sure.
As for the side quests, they've gotten rid of like the bracer points or the academic points from, or the detective points from Crossspells, Trails in the Sky, anything like that. So it's not so much.
Engaging.
There's not as many side quests. Like you can still talk to people, and you can still get things like you can get the books that are in every single one. Which, please read them. They give backstory. They're so worth it. So I guess that goes back to the world building. But anyways, yeah, so there's no real side quest in getting them up there. They do have something called RP. Now,
Sure.
RP is the same sense as like the bracer points or the academic points. As you get a higher amount, you hit a certain level, and then you get a reward. However, it's not meant to be done in the first playthrough. The max is 500 by my first playthrough. I think I had something like 150 or 160. So you can carry them over between playthroughs. So that helps out. Now in the Reverie Corridor as well, as you can only unlock characters that are not part of the story, you can actually play all the mini games in there. So you have Palm Party from Cold Steel 3 and 4, Vantage Masters as well. I think Blade is in there as well. Don't quote me on that. Admittedly, I didn't spend very much time in the Reverie Corridor. It forces you to go in there 3 times through 2 or 3 times because of the plot. But other than that, I didn't focus. I should, because you can drop
more.
experience items.
Let's go.
Because you have stupid amounts of characters. I think there's like 35 or 40 playable characters in that.
Cut through. Now.
When you go through the Reverie Corridor, every enemy in there has a chance to
turn.
drop Azure Droplets. Azure Droplets give you 10,000 experience. There's also Grand Azure Droplets, which are 25,000. So
Let's go.
if you're not using a character and they fall behind a little bit, you can use these to
Sure.
match your level. And you can only use them to level up to the same level as the highest character in
Hey,
your game,
you.
like in your party. So say you have Lloyd at level 151. You can't use Azure Droplets on anybody else to get them higher than that level. So
Engaging.
they're there. It's helpful for balancing out your party, but you can't use them to get ridiculously over leveled, which is nice. So as for the length and pacing, the pacing is really good in this. That was one of my complaints with the Cold Steel games.
Sure.
And like most of the Trails games, honestly, the pacing is
My turn.
it's excellent. You don't feel like you're in like a down period. It's
Battle
steady.
complete.
It doesn't slow down.
Let's continue.
As for the length of the game, coming off of Cold Steel 3, 4, it's much shorter. Cold Steel 3 clocked in at
There's a treasure
120
chest right over there.
hours. Cold Steel 4, I clocked in 145 hours. Trails into Reverie took me 60 hours. So honestly, that's at sweet spot. That's one of my concerns with the Trails games, is when you start playing them, you're in for a long trip. Like 140 hours,
Stop
like
right
yes,
there.
the games are great, but they're long. And
Hand over
you're
your
going to be
face.
playing them for a very long time. And in this day and age where we have a great game coming out every 2 weeks, having a game over 100 hours, while it's a great world,
Enough. Do as you're told.
sometimes it's just too much. I feel like Trails into Reverie has the
Check
sweet
the
spot.
contents.
Nothing to really complain about. It's great.
just a
It
stuffed
doesn't
animal.
overstay its welcome.
Did we get the
You
wrong
get
person?
great story. It was
That's
very
not
emotional.
Just a stuffed animal, silly.
But yeah, it's
one of
sweet.
my special ones.
So as far as like character development and relationships,
What the?
it relies on you knowing the relationships. It doesn't transfer over your save file from Cold Steel 4, but it asks you, hey, who did you do your final bonding event with? I did it with Emma,
down to
because
3.
Emma is best girl.
Let's get them
Fight
down
me
to
IRL.
Okay.
Like, there's a few
Let's
characters
end
that
this
do
quick.
get some. This game does introduce in C's Route 3 new characters: Swin, Nadia, and Lapis. Swin and Nadia get touched upon, but not really fleshed out. Like, you hear a little bit of their backstory, but it doesn't go into it really. I'm hoping in some sense, like, it does. You get more details about it. Because I was like, oh, these characters are neat. Oh, I like that kind of backstory, but then it just stopped. And it didn't go into details about it. Now, I know Trails games kind of go into detail about a lot of that. Like, in future games. But considering this is the last game with in this arc of, like, Cold Steel with these characters, because the next one is Kuro Kiseki. Which is in Calvert, which is totally separate. So it's like, okay, is this all you're gonna do? Are you gonna do like some
Are you
like
ready?
spin-off side game that focuses on them or something? Because I want to know more.
Got you.
I want to know the details. So all right. So for replayability, Game Plus, where you can carry almost everything over, great for trophy hunters. It doesn't use bonding points, so that's great. I think you can do it all in one playthrough. You might need to do multiples to max out the RP.
They're open.
So after you complete the game, endgame content. We all love endgame content. You play through the game, you got the story done, and you're like, I want more. I want to play more. Okay. So the Reverie Corridor, after you beat the game, it opens up the whole new stratum in 1 to 3. So stratum 1, 2, 3, and then the first half of 4 opens up before you beat the game. After you beat the game, you save your clear file. You now have another section to go through.
There.
It gives you more difficult enemies, more difficult bosses. It lets you level up. And then there's a 5th stratum. Once you finish the 5th stratum, it offers a bonus cutscene that ties into the next game in the series. There's your world building. You have more. And it's
my turn.
these cutscenes, I both love them and I hate them. Because it's like, okay, yeah, we find out more about the world, and then it's like, oh my god, now I need the next game. Give me it now.
I shall go.
But yeah, so
Thunderbolt.
Trails into Reverie, I honestly
Engaging.
loved my time with it. It scratched a lot of itches. I loved having more time with the whole Crossbell team. Blade is great. He's, just a regular detective. He's just a regular person. He's just a police officer. But it closes up the whole Crossbell being independent stage. And it feels really nice. Have you played the game yet? I would love to hear more. So please let me know in the comments below. 100% suggest this game. It's such a blast. Yes, it's a fan service game, but it does it well.
Psionic, activate.
I don't feel bad about it. But yeah, so
Attack.
if you enjoyed my review, hit that subscribe button, give me a like, leave a comment.
Right.
Even if you didn't, leave a comment telling me how much you hated my review. I'm just looking to get into this. You can always catch me on the weekends. I do stream at twitch.tv/Shinky. If you check out the description, I will have a link there. So until next time, keep playing those games, and I will see you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
It's my turn.
Like I said, that is a total train wreck. So there you have it. Those are all of my first reviews. They all took place from about July 2023 up until December. What do you think? Do you like having these little compilations where you can watch all my reviews in one place? Should I do it again? Let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy this video and you're new to the channel, make sure you like the video, hit that subscribe button, and ding the notification bell so you don't miss a single one of my videos. Anyways, with that being said, this has been Shanky. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.